Chapter 2578. Hearing Marshal Nan's words, General Dian Xing hurriedly kowtowed and thanked him as if he had been pardoned. After crawling to his feet, he asked carefully, "Marshal, I have sent out 150 captains to search for them all over the continent. What do you think we should do next?" Marshal Nan frowned again and asked in a low voice, "How many captains and guards are left in the God Palace?" General Dian Xing paused for a moment before replying, "Only 200 captains and 1,000 elite guards." Marshal Nan cursed angrily. "Idiot! How could you send out half of the captains and guards guarding the God Palace? The defense of the God Palace is so weak. If those two alien powerhouses came to sneak attack, how could they resist? If Ben Shuai hadn't come back in time, wouldn't the God Palace have been razed to the ground?" General Dian Xing had never thought of this. He exclaimed in disbelief, "Marshal, how is this possible? No matter how daring those two alien bastards are, they wouldn't dare to come to the God Palace." Marshal Nan scolded angrily. "They've already killed so many captains and guards and disturbed the entire Zero Continent. Why wouldn't they dare?" General Dian Xing's face stiffened. He explained embarrassedly, "Marshal, you're guarding the God Palace. If those two alien bastards dare to invade, wouldn't they be walking right into a trap?" This flattery, which wasn't too subtle, made Marshal Nan's anger dissipate a lot. He waved his hand with a dark face and said, "No need to talk nonsense. Send the order immediately to strengthen the patrol and defense. In addition, the Myriad Kingdoms God Conference will be held tomorrow." General Dian Xing frowned and said tentatively, "Marshal, please forgive me for acting on my own initiative and holding this Myriad Kingdoms God Conference. I did this to show the powerful force of our race and highlight your divine majesty. However, the God Conference is scheduled to be held half a month later. Isn't it too hasty to hold it half a month earlier?" Marshal Nan stared at him and said in a dignified tone, "It's just a claptrap. What's the point? Can't you tell what's more important in the face of danger?" General Dian Xing was scolded badly. He hurriedly nodded and apologized. However, he had some doubts in his heart. He thought to himself, even if those two alien race experts are very powerful, killing a large number of captains and guards and disrupting the Zero mainland, they're still very powerful. However, wasn't the Grand Marshal's reaction a little too cautious? Not only had he left the Purple Heaven Cave in advance, but he had also played along with the Myriad Kingdoms God Assembly. He was also wary of those two experts. How could this be? Could it be that the Grand Marshal doesn't have the confidence to kill those two foreign race experts? At the thought of this, General Dian Xing's heart skipped a beat, and he felt a chill down his spine. He had a bad feeling in the depths of his soul. "We have just occupied the Purple Cloud Star, and our soldiers have suffered heavy casualties. We need to rest and recuperate. I hope that the Grand Marshal will be able to resolve this matter smoothly. Don't let anything go wrong." General Pointing Star prayed silently in his heart. Then, he calmed himself down and bid farewell to Marshal Jinan. After walking out of the study, he went to the meeting hall and gathered many captains to pass on the order of the Southern Expedition Marshal. Standing at the door of the meeting hall, he glanced outside the hall. On the square below the stairs, more than 100 alien race experts were still kneeling on the ground, holding the treasure box above their heads with both hands. Seeing this, General Pointing Star felt slightly comforted. He thought to himself, "Our race can occupy hundreds of worlds. We can definitely rule the entire Purple Cloud Star zone. So what if they're just two true God stage alien race experts?" Then, he turned and stepped into the meeting hall. Bathed in the dim light, he walked to the main seat. "Men, pass on my order. Gather all the captains for a meeting." As he walked to the main seat, General Pointing Star waved his hand and called the black armored guard in the corner. A black armored guard immediately walked out from the dark corner. With his hand on the hilt of the sword at his waist, he walked toward General Pointing Star. General Pointing Star frowned when he saw this guard walking toward him instead of passing on the order. He scolded somewhat angrily. "Are you deaf? Can't you hear me?" The black armored guard turned a deaf ear to him and continued walking toward him with his head lowered. General Pointing Star was already in a bad mood. Seeing the black armored guard being so rude, a ray of cold light flashed across his eyes. He raised his hand and slapped at him. "Rude bastard! How dare you ignore my order? You are courting death." A dark red palm shadow the size of a millstone slapped toward the black armored guard with a terrifying force. Then, something unexpected happened. The black armored guard suddenly raised his head and revealed a sneer on his face. His eyes were especially piercing and mocking. Clang! The black armored guard instantly drew out his mysterious black sword and slashed out a dark golden sword light toward General Pointing Star. Bow! The dark red palm shadow was shattered by the sword light, and there was a sound like a bubble bursting. The sword light's power did not decrease. Like a phantom, it split the air and hit General Pointing Star. Boom! General Pointing Star was caught off guard. His face was still filled with shock as he spat out blood and flew backward. Boom! With a loud bang, General Dian Xing broke 2 pillars in succession before falling into the main hall. He rolled on the ground for more than 10 times before he rolled to the door. The sword light slashed the ground and tore out a 1,000-foot-long trench that extended to the stairs outside the hall. Countless pebbles and wood shavings fell from the roof and landed in the main hall. General Pointing Star crawled up pathetically. He only felt that his chest was cold. He looked down and realized that there was a hideous wound on his chest that extended all the way to his abdomen. Dark red blood gushed out of the wound like spring water and sprinkled on the main hall. Through the wound, one could see his internal organs and broken bones. The heart-wrenching pain made General Pointing Star tremble. He was shocked and angry. He stared at the black armored guard in disbelief and shouted with a hoarse voice, "Bastard! Not a warrior of our race, but a foreign race." The dark golden sword light and the strength of a true god were the best proof. After shouting, General Pointing Star suddenly came to his senses. Recalling what Marshal Nanjinan had just said, his body suddenly stiffened, and his face was filled with horror. It's that foreign race elite? Marshal Nan had mentioned before that the defense of the God Palace was weak. If the foreign race elite took the opportunity to invade, wouldn't they destroy the God Palace? General Pointing Star did not take it to heart. He only felt that it was ridiculous. In his opinion, no matter how strong and arrogant the foreign race elite was, they would not dare to come to the heaven-punishing God Palace to die. However, he did not expect Marshal Nan's words to come true. The foreign race elite that had wreaked havoc in the Zero mainland and killed countless captains and guards had really infiltrated the heaven-punishing God Palace. Download address, mobile reading. Chapter 2579. General Dian Xing did not expect the other party to be so audacious. After confirming the other party's identity, he quickly raised his right palm and shot out a beam of dark red light as a warning signal. However, before the dark red signal could fly out of the main hall, it was destroyed by a beam of golden sword radiance. In the next moment, the black armored guard disappeared into thin air. Whoosh! When he appeared again, he had teleported thousands of feet away and was behind General Dian Xing's swoosh. The mysterious black sword pierced through the back of General Dian Xing's head, releasing a bone-chilling black light. The speed of the sword was extremely fast, comparable to the speed of light. General Dian Xing's emotions fluctuated too much. He was caught off guard and was severely injured. His strength also decreased. As a result, he could not dodge the fatal sword. Bam! The mysterious black sword shattered General Point Star's protective divine power and pierced through the black scales on his head, directly penetrating his brain. The blade pierced through the back of General Dian Xing's head and came out of his forehead, causing blood to spurt out. The violent sword chi exploded in his head and instantly blasted his head into smithereens. A rain of blood burst out and splashed in the main hall. General Dian Xing's head was gone, and only his muscular body was left. Even so, he did not die on the spot. His headless body turned around and fled without hesitation. He ran out of the main hall as fast as lightning. He was terrified. He knew that he could not defeat the other party. He only wanted to escape from the main hall and seek help from Marshal Nan. However, the black-armored guard's figure flashed and chased him out of the main hall. The mysterious black sword released a beam of golden light again and shot out a dazzling beam of sword radiance. It was as if the golden sun had appeared again, dispelling the darkness of the night and illuminating the night sky. Bam! The golden sword struck General Pointing Star, splitting him into two halves from the middle. Blood spurted out. It was a ghastly sight under the golden light. However, what was more frightening was that General Jianxing did not die even though he had lost his head and was split in half. The two halves of his body separated and fled to the left and right, as expected of a true immortal from the Heaven Punisher. His vitality is indeed strong. The black-armored guard murmured. His left hand struck out an illusory image of a dragon elephant, while his right hand slashed out a dazzling sword light. With two loud bangs, the two halves of General Pointing Star's body were blasted into pieces and scattered on the steps outside the palace. General Jianxing was completely blasted into smithereens. This was a true death. Moreover, the dragon elephant phantom and the sword light contained the nine heavens' divine fire, which burned the flesh into ashes. As a result, General Pointing Star had completely disappeared, and there was no possibility of him being resurrected. In the square outside the palace, more than 100 alien race martial gods knelt on the ground and witnessed this scene with their own eyes. When everyone heard the sounds of fighting in the hall, they all looked up. Then, they saw an unforgettable scene. The headless General Point Star tried his best to escape, but he was cut in half by the black-armored guard. Then, before the two halves could escape, they were blasted into smithereens. Everyone's eyes widened as they were filled with shock. No one could have thought that the true God Realm General Pointing Star was actually killed by someone so effortlessly. Furthermore, the person who had attacked him was a guard from the Heaven Punishing clan. This was far too bizarre. The alien race martial gods were all flabbergasted, their minds blank. Only God Lord Silvermoon was able to maintain his clarity of mind and see the truth. It's him. He actually attacked ahead of time. The true God Realm General Pointing Star was so easily killed by him. Just who is he? How could he be so terrifyingly strong? From the looks of it, everything he said before was true. Countless thoughts flashed through God Lord Silvermoon's mind, and his heart began to beat faster. At this moment, a furious roar came from the depths of the divine palace. Vile creature, die! As that thunderous roar came from the depths of the divine palace, a figure wrapped in red light flew out. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, that muscular figure descended from the heavens, both fists punching at the black-armored guard at the entrance. There was no doubt that this was the Southern Vanquishing Marshal. Even though General Pointing Star had not sent a signal before his death, the Southern Vanquishing Marshal had still been alarmed. After all, the battle just now had caused quite a stir, and more than half of the conference hall had collapsed. Boom! At this critical moment, the black-armored guard raised his left fist, unleashing the image of a golden dragon and elephant that clashed with the Southern Vanquishing Marshal's attack. Along with the earth-shattering explosion, violent airwaves exploded and instantly knocked down the alien race martial gods who were kneeling outside the palace. Everyone was sent flying backward, vomiting blood as they rolled across the plaza. The conference hall was also destroyed and turned into ruins. The several dozen black-armored guards on the steps outside were also obliterated by the shockwave. A deep crater was left in the ground, obscuring the night sky in a cloud of dust. The terrifying shockwave caused the ground to tremble, and the plaza was riddled with cracks. In a clash between true gods, even the shockwaves from their battle could destroy the world. The 100-some alien race martial gods all retreated in shock to the edge of the plaza. Their gazes pierced through the darkness and fell upon the ruins. Two experts stood in the night sky, facing off against each other from 10,000 feet away. The expert on the left was a human youth dressed in white robes. This was his true body. The black-armored guard from before had only been a disguise. A white robe, a black sword, and waist-length black hair fluttered in the night wind. He was like a lofty mountain, his body exuding a supreme majesty that looked down on all living beings. The alien race martial gods stared at him, their eyes brimming with shock, worship, and excitement. God Lord Silvermoon, in particular, was so excited that his blood was boiling, his eyes shining. The Southern Vanquishing Marshal on the right was a muscular heaven-conquering expert with a pitch-black body and a head of dark red hair. He held a blood-red halberd in both hands, and his body was wreathed in dark red flames. He looked like a god of death who had walked out of hell. An invisible pressure and killing intent engulfed the entire divine palace, and the alien race martial gods didn't dare to look directly at him, fear welling up in their hearts. These two experts were gods who had surpassed the martial god realm and truly stepped into the divine Tao. "It's you, Ji Tianxing." The Southern Vanquishing Marshal stared at the white-robed youth, and when he recognized him, his pupils constricted and his face paled. Ji Tianxing calmly stared at him, a mocking smile on his lips. "Southern Vanquishing Marshal, I went to great lengths to cross half a star zone to find you. Are you very touched?" The Southern Vanquishing Marshal's face turned even colder, and he sternly barked, "Ji Tianxing, in just a few short years, you actually broke into the true God realm?" Although he couldn't see through Ji Tianxing's cultivation base, he couldn't figure out Ji Tianxing's background. But if Ji Tianxing could so quickly kill General Dianxing and take a punch from him, he had to be at the true God realm. Ji Tianxing did not answer. Instead, he playfully said, "The Zero Continent is in chaos, and your trusted General Dianxing has been obliterated by me. Do you like this big gift?" Chapter 2580. The South Conquering Marshal's pupils constricted, and hatred flashed in his eyes. However, he remained calm and did not show any anger or irritation. He knew very well that Ji Tianxing was deliberately provoking him to disturb his state of mind. So what? You just took advantage of the fact that Bun Shuai was in seclusion to use your tricks. The South Conquering Marshal sneered contemptuously. "Do you think that you're qualified to fight with Bun Shuai just because you have reached the true immortal realm? You are too naive. Bun Shuai will soon let you know that you are seeking your own death by crossing the void to Zixiao planet." As he spoke, the South Conquering Marshal waved his blood-colored halberd and charged toward Ji Tianxing. Swoosh! Swoosh! Two dark red blades of light that were hundreds of meters long slashed toward Ji Tianxing with the power to destroy everything in their path. "Umph! You are the one who will die." Ji Tianxing snorted coldly. He held the sword of Burial of Heaven in his right hand and slashed out two dazzling golden sword lights. Bam! Bam! With two muffled sounds, the dark red light blades and dazzling golden sword lights collided and both collapsed at the same time. Violent waves of air exploded, blooming into a dazzling brilliance in the night sky. The next moment, the South Conquering Marshal rushed to Ji Tianxing and stabbed with his blood-colored halberd. Ji Tianxing held the sword of Burial of Heaven in front of him and blocked the attack of the halberd. Clang! With a crisp sound of metal exploding, the halberd and the sword of Burial of Heaven separated upon contact. Ji Tianxing and the South Conquering Marshal were sent flying at the same time. However, while the South Conquering Marshal was sent flying back thousands of feet, Ji Tianxing was sent flying 10 miles away. Although neither of them was injured, there was a difference in their strength. Ji Tianxing was obviously weaker. Seeing this, the Southern Expedition Marshal laughed ferociously. He held his halberd and attacked Ji Tianxing again. "You just broke through to the true God realm, and you dare to seek revenge from Bun Shuai? He must be tired of living." After testing out Ji Tianxing's strength, the Southern Expedition Marshal became more confident and confident. His attacks were also more aggressive and ferocious. "Ha ha! That was just a warm-up. The real show is about to begin." Ji Tianxing was not afraid at all. He sneered confidently, and a golden light burst out from his body. Schwa! In the next moment, his body expanded several hundred times, turning into a golden giant that was hundreds of feet tall. Dazzling golden lights swirled around his body, forming the projection of a massive golden dragon, a vast and mighty divine aura that could suppress the heavens and the earth erupted from his body. Roar! He opened his mouth and roared. Holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands, he used the heaven-splitting, earth-splitting technique and fiercely slashed at the Southern Marshal. Clang! The sword of burial of heaven that was hundreds of feet long struck the blood-colored halberd fiercely, exploding with an earth-shattering sound. The incomparably violent power immediately shook the halberd, and the Southern Expedition Marshal was also sent flying. He rolled across the sky and flew for a full 20 miles before stopping. After standing still in the night sky, he looked at Ji Tianxing in horror and roared in disbelief. "This is impossible. You actually mastered the Dragon Clan's secret technique that can increase your combat strength by 6 times? The Southern Expedition Marshal was very knowledgeable. In the process of conquering the stars, he had interacted with the Dragon Clan before. Because of this, he was even more surprised and shocked, because he knew that the Dragon Clan was arrogant and claimed to be the most perfect clan in the world. They did not take the other clans seriously. As for the Dragon Clan's secret technique, the Dragon Clan would never teach it to outsiders. Other clans could not learn it either. At this moment, the Southern Expedition Marshal even suspected that Ji Tianxing was from the Dragon Clan. However, before he could open his mouth to question him, Ji Tianxing charged over again. Sword of Burial of Heaven. He held the Sword of Burial of Heaven with both hands and unleashed the most powerful divine power, slashing out a pitch-black sword light. Although the sword light was pitch-black, it was different from the night sky. It was a kind of solid black that contained a terrifying chill of death. The Southern Expedition Marshal's divine soul was locked by the sword light, and he was instantly filled with horror. His whole body turned cold as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. He had no time to think. Why was the power of this sword so terrifying that it could make him feel the arrival of death? At this critical moment, he could only hold the blood-colored halberd with both hands and raise it above his head to block in front of him. Bang! In the next moment, the sword of death that was thousands of feet long slashed the blood-colored halberd. The pitch-black sword light collapsed on the spot and exploded into thousands of pieces, splashing in all directions. The blood-colored halberd had a dent in it. It trembled violently. The halberd made a dull, buzzing sound, as if it could not bear the burden and was about to break. The Southern Expedition Marshal was sent flying again. His face turned purple, and the blood in his body surged. Boom! He fell from a night sky and smashed into the spacious square. A deep pit with a radius of tens of thousands of feet appeared on the ground. Gravel and soil splashed out, blocking the night sky. The square was instantly turned into ruins. The entire sacred palace kept shaking. The ground cracked, and the palaces kept collapsing. The violent shock wave sent the martial gods of the foreign tribes, who were watching the battle, flying dozens of miles away. They fell into the vast sea of clouds. Many unlucky martial gods of the foreign tribes had blood spurting out of their orifices. They were seriously injured. Such an outcome made everyone turn pale with fright. They were terrified. They had not seen the power of a true god until then. It was terrifying. As martial gods, they were not qualified to interfere in a battle between true gods. Even watching the battle was very dangerous. They might even lose their lives. More than 100 martial gods of the foreign tribes flew away and retreated 200 miles away. The battle in the night sky was still going on. Ji Tianxing and the Southern Expedition Marshal were fighting fiercely. One of them was covered in golden light, as if he were a god. The other kept expanding and became a pitch-black beast the size of a mountain. It waved its halberd wildly and roared. The two figures flashed in the night sky. They could change directions 3 times in an instant and move dozens of miles away. Many martial gods of the foreign tribes could not see their real bodies. They could only see their shadows. At the same time, the captains and black armor guards of the heaven-conquering divine palace came from all directions and surrounded the battlefield. More than 100 captains, along with more than 1,000 guards, surrounded the area so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Seeing Ji Tianxing and the South conquering martial fighting, The crowd was united against a common enemy, cursing and roaring in anger. They spread out and formed a mysterious and huge battle formation. They worked together to cast divine arts and secret arts to attack Ji Tianxing. However, Ji Tianxing was too fast, and he had mastered the laws of space. His body flashed and appeared and disappeared. Even the martial gods could not lock onto him. As a result, the attacks of more than 1,000 guards could not touch him at all. The divine arts cast by more than 100 captains covered a radius of 200 miles. However, they could not hit Ji Tianxing accurately. The overwhelming dark red light turned the entire divine palace into a sea of blood. However, the captains and guards could not help the Southern Expedition Marshal. Instead, they made the battlefield even more chaotic. Chapter 2581. Soon, 100 seconds had passed. Ji Tianxing and Marshal Nan had exchanged more than 3,000 blows, but there was still no winner. Both of them were slightly injured. There were a few more wounds on their bodies, and blood kept gushing out. The destructive shockwave swept through the entire divine palace and destroyed dozens of palaces. Only a few palaces were protected by the divine array and temporarily survived, but they were also on the verge of collapse. Many of the captains and guards were worried and anxious. They really wanted to help Marshal Nan kill Ji Tianxing quickly. However, they were too weak to be of any use. Instead, they kept causing trouble, making Marshal Nan feel helpless. Marshal Nan wanted to seize the opportunity to wave his blood-colored halberd twice in a row and give Ji Tianxing a fatal blow. However, at the critical moment, many captains and guards joined forces to release attacks that poured down like a torrential flood. Ji Tianxing used the law of space and teleported away. Marshal Nan was also forced to retreat. This finally angered the Southern conquering marshal. He roared, a bunch of useless trash. Don't cause trouble for Ben Shuai. Set up the array immediately." Hearing the order, the captains showed fear in their eyes and hurriedly stopped attacking. They each led a dozen black-armored guards and scattered around the battlefield, starting to set up the array. Although they were weak and could not interfere in a battle between true gods, they could set up a sealing array to seal the area. Then, they could release the unique power of the Heaven Punishers to suppress Ji Tianxing and weaken his strength. However, the South Conquering Marshal would not be affected by this. Thinking of this, many captains were excited and looked forward to it. However, while the idea was plentiful, the reality was bony. Whoosh! Ji Tianxing's figure flashed and instantly crossed the night sky, escaping the encirclement. He flew to the back of the Divine Palace and appeared above the Golden Sun Palace. The captains were stunned for a moment and looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Join forces to attack? They might not be able to hit Ji Tianxing. Instead, they would be in the way and affect Marshal Nan's performance. Stand by and do nothing? Isn't this too stupid? Too stupid. It was disloyal of him to watch the Southern Expedition Marshal fight alone and not help him. For a moment, the captains had no idea what to do. They could only chase after him and rush to Jinyang Palace. The Southern Expedition Marshal's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. His eyes flashed with a cold light, and his lungs were about to explode from anger. His strength was stronger than Ji Tianxing, and he had so many subordinates, but he couldn't stop Ji Tianxing. This was a great humiliation. Moreover, there were more than 100 martial gods of the foreign tribes watching from the Sea of Clouds not far away. The South Conquering Marshal was utterly humiliated. "Little bastard, Ben Shuai will tear you apart." The furious Southern Expedition Marshal recklessly rushed towards Ji Tianxing, holding his halberd with both hands and chopping down. Chua, a 3,000 zhang long glowing blade, slashed down fiercely like a giant axe. This light blade was purplish-red in color, which was a sign that the power had been condensed to the limit. However, the Southern Expedition Marshal regretted it as soon as the dark red light blade slashed out. He suddenly remembered that there was an ancient divine bird suppressed in the dilapidated Jinyang Palace. That was the Golden Rock, which was as powerful as him and had a noble bloodline. If the dark red light blade slashed down, it would definitely destroy the Jinyang Palace and even kill the Golden Rock. Thinking of this, the Southern Expedition Marshal was filled with regret and anger. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Boom! In the deafening noise, the dark red light blade fell from the sky and instantly shattered the Jinyang Palace. The huge palace turned into ruins on the spot, and billions of pieces of gravel burst out. Ji Tianxing teleported 100 li away and easily dodged it. The Southern Expedition Marshal roared and quickly chased after him with his halberd. Of course, when he passed by the ruins of the Jinyang Palace, he subconsciously glanced at it. Under the ruins, the abyss and the ceiling array were still there, but they were a little broken. Seeing this, the Southern Expedition Marshal was relieved. He quickly ordered the captains, "What are you waiting for? Go and suppress the divine bird. Don't let it escape." More than 100 captains suddenly felt as if they had been pardoned. They finally had something to do. They no longer had to pretend to attack. They all rushed to the ruins of the Jinyang Palace. But at this moment, the ceiling array that shrouded the abyss suddenly shattered. Chirp! A clear and high-pitched chirp of a bird came from the abyss. The piercing sound clearly contained surprise and excitement, as well as monstrous killing intent. Many captains were dumbfounded. The Southern Expedition Marshal was also shocked. He quickly turned around and looked at the ruins of the Jinyang Palace. He saw a dazzling golden light shoot up from the abyss like a thunderbolt. Swoosh! In the next moment, the mountain-like golden figure instantly crossed the night sky and rushed in front of the Southern Expedition Marshal. While the Southern Expedition Marshal was shocked, he subconsciously placed his halberd in front of him. Bang! The golden figure crashed into the Southern Expedition Marshal, creating a deafening sound. The terrifying impact sent Marshal Nanjinan flying. 2 streams of blood spurted out from his nose and mouth. The blood-colored halberd in his hand was also sent flying. He also let out a painful scream. After flying for 30 miles and standing firmly in the night sky, he found that there was a bloody hole in his chest. His organs and bones could be seen clearly in the bloody hole. Dark red blood also gushed out like a flood. There was no doubt that this was a wound caused by the Golden Rock. The Southern Expedition Marshal was in unbearable pain. His body trembled. He looked up and saw the Golden Rock spreading its wings and floating in the night sky 40 miles away. At this moment, it was not as weak and dispirited as before. It was full of energy. Its feathers were neat and bright, and it even emitted a dazzling metallic luster. Its injuries had recovered by more than half. However, there was a crack on its sharp beak. Blood kept gushing out. The attack just now was a fatal attack that it had prepared for a long time. Unfortunately, this attack did not kill the Southern Expedition Marshal. It only severely injured him. The Southern Expedition Marshal's figure flashed and grabbed the blood-colored halberd that fell from the sky. He held it firmly in his hand and blocked in front of him. He looked at the Golden Rock in shock and asked in disbelief, "You feathered beast, you were suppressed by Ben Shuai. How can you recover from your injuries?" "Ha ha," the Golden Rock sneered and said in a mocking tone, "Of course, I have to thank your lackeys for supporting me when you were not here." "What?" The Southern Expedition Marshal frowned fiercely. His body exploded with anger as he turned to look at the captains in the night sky. Those captains were suppressed by his anger. They were all frightened and shrunk their necks, unable to speak. Only a few captains resisted the pressure of the Southern Expedition Marshal and shouted in fear, "Grand Marshal, don't listen to that B*TCH bird's provocation. Grand Marshal, we are loyal to you. How can we heal its injuries?" Chapter 2582. The Southern Conquering Marshal was only angry for a moment and was blinded by anger. After calming down, he understood that the Golden Rock was trying to sow discord. After all, he knew what the captains were capable of. They would not dare to do such a thing. The South Conquering Marshal looked at the Golden Rock, then turned to look at Ji Tianxing, who was not far away. A thought suddenly flashed through his mind. His face turned cold as he shouted at Ji Tianxing, "Ji Tianxing, was it you?" Ji Tianxing sneered and asked, "So what if it was me? So what if it wasn't me?" Anyway, you're already at the end of your life. Accept your fate. He and the Golden Rock were both true gods. If they joined forces to attack the South conquering Marshal, they would definitely win. Moreover, he could fight the South conquering Marshal to a draw alone. The Golden Rock had just appeared and severely injured the South conquering Marshal. The outcome of the battle had already been decided. How could the South conquering Marshal admit defeat? He sneered and said, "Arrogant. Even if you join forces, what can you do? Don't forget that this is Zhixiao planet, Ben Shuai's territory. Ben Shuai has many warriors and more than 100 officials under his command." As he spoke, the South conquering Marshal looked at the martial gods in the sea of clouds and ordered sternly, "What are you waiting for? Why don't you join forces to fight the enemy and make a name for yourself? If anyone can kill Ji Tianxing, Ben Shuai will make him deputy marshal. If anyone can suppress the Golden Rock, Ben Shuai will make him a general and give him a true god weapon." The martial gods hiding in the sea of clouds had shrunk their necks and watched the battle carefully. However, no one had expected that the battle would be directed at them. The South conquering Marshal had ordered them to attack Ji Tianxing and the Golden Rock. What was going on? They were only here to participate in the Myriad Countries Gods Conference to offer tributes and show their loyalty. They were not the South conquering Marshal's slaves or subordinates. Why should they listen to his orders? Moreover, everyone had seen the terrifying strength of Ji Tianxing and the Golden Rock, so they were unwilling to get close to them. The martial gods of the alien races instinctively resisted the order of the Southern conquering Marshal. They even stepped back subconsciously. However, the Southern Expedition Marshal's promise was extremely tempting. Whoever killed Ji Tianxing would be promoted to the position of Deputy Marshal. The one who suppressed the Golden Rock would be given the title of Great General and a true god weapon. This was simply too breathtaking. Many martial gods of the alien tribes were overwhelmed with emotions. Their eyes were burning with greed. However, no one was in a hurry to jump out. Everyone looked left and right, observing the reactions of others. Gradually, some people's wills were shaken, and they began to walk forward. Yes, Grand Marshal. With someone taking the lead, more people immediately followed suit. One outsider martial god after another walked out of the sea of clouds with Kenshin weapons in their hands. "I am willing to serve the Grand Marshal. The Southern Expedition Marshal is invincible. He will definitely unify the entire star field. No one will be able to stop him. We are willing to charge into the enemy lines for the Grand Marshal." In just a few seconds, 40-some martial gods of the alien tribes had flown toward the battlefield, their faces brimming with anticipation. The remaining martial gods remained in the sea of clouds, not daring to act rashly. The majority of them were watching, their minds still hesitating and struggling. Only a small number of people hated the heaven-punishing race to the bone and refused to submit even when the temptation was right in front of them. For example, God Lord Silvermoon. She had been watching the battle this entire time, her blood boiling with excitement, her eyes fixed on Ji Tianxing the entire time. When she saw Ji Tianxing display his invincible might and fight to a draw with the Southern Expedition Marshal, she was so excited that she almost screamed. She finally believed in Ji Tianxing completely. She also saw a ray of hope and silently prayed that Ji Tianxing would be able to kill the Southern Expedition Marshal. But now the Southern Expedition Marshal had made all the martial gods of the alien tribes bow their heads. These spineless martial gods of the alien tribes wanted to point their butcher's knives at Ji Tianxing. This had crossed God Lord Silvermoon's bottom line, and she was furious. Whoosh! Her body flashed as she flew into the air. The expressions of the two old women who had been standing behind her suddenly changed, revealing a look of deep shock. Doesn't the god Lord hate the heaven-punishing race to the bone? Why would she listen to the Southern Expedition Marshal's orders? Has the god Lord's personality changed? Or was the Southern Expedition Marshal's offer too tempting? The two old women glanced at each other and secretly communicated with their divine senses. But a moment later, the two of them understood God, Lord Silvermoon's intentions. God Lord Silvermoon flew into the air and blocked the path of the foreign martial gods. Filled with righteous indignation, he cursed, "You shameless, spineless idiots, stop right there." In order to make it easier to communicate, she and the rest of the crowd were speaking the rather clumsy language of the heaven punishing. But everyone understood, and they immediately stopped and angrily glared at her. The more than 100 martial gods in the Sea of Clouds, the Southern Expedition Marshal, Ji Tianxing, and the Golden Rock all turned to her. Everyone's eyes were focused on God Lord Silvermoon, and they were filled with shock, confusion, and anger. God Lord Silvermoon was fearless as she angrily shouted, "All of you are God Lords from various great worlds, leaders of various races. Just like me, your worlds and people were invaded and massacred by the heaven-punishing race. We were all defeated. At least several billion of our people were slaughtered, and countless people were left homeless or even enslaved by the heaven-punishing race. To this day, we have brought a large number of tributes to Purple Heaven Star, but our people are still living in the abyss of suffering and darkness." God Lord Silvermoon's voice was impassioned, and her clear eyes glistened with tears. The several dozen martial gods had originally been angrily glaring at her, but now their anger had dissipated, and they quietly lowered their heads. God Lord Silvermoon pointed at Ji Tianxing and loudly said, "We were very fortunate. After enduring the deliberate humiliation of the heaven-punishing race, we encountered a great hero. It was him who killed several hundred martial gods of the heaven-punishing race and several thousand guards of the heaven-punishing race. He threw the Zero Continent into chaos, and the people of the various races saw hope and banded together to resist the rule of the heaven-punishing race. Now, the flames of war are burning all over the continent, and the people of the various races are using their blood and lives in exchange for their freedom. It was also Ji Tianxing who killed General Dianxing and wanted to kill Marshal Jinan. He wanted to get rid of the source of all evil, unravel the scheme of the heaven-punishing race, and save all the people of the Purple Heaven Star Zone, because just like us, he was invaded and persecuted by the heaven-punishing race." At this point, God Lord Silvermoon drew back her hand and looked disdainfully at the martial gods of the various races. She derisively scolded, "In front of the heaven-punishing race, we are all tragic victims. We should unite and work together to overthrow the rule of the heaven-punishing race and take back our freedom. But what about you? What are you doing? For the sake of Marshal Jinan's empty promise, you are ungrateful and want to attack our compatriots and kill our hero. Where's your conscience? Think about the billions of souls that died at the hands of the heaven-punishing race. Are you worthy of them?" Chapter 2583. God Lord Silvermoon's impassioned words had ignited the blood of all the foreign martial gods, especially the last few sentences that were filled with righteousness and sternness. They struck directly at the heart and enlightened the apathetic. The 40-some foreign martial gods were all ashamed, their faces dejected as they lowered their heads, not daring to meet God Lord Silvermoon's eyes. The martial gods of the foreign tribes who were still hesitating in the Sea of Clouds burst into an uproar. Many of them nodded in agreement and echoed God Lord Silvermoon's words. There were even some people who flew out of the Sea of Clouds into the night sky and raised their arms to shout. "Everyone, I'm sure that all of you have seen that Marshal Jinan is doomed. He is no match for Ji Tianxing and the Golden Rock. The heaven-punishing race that swept through half the Star Zone is not invincible." An old man with white hair and a beard flew to God Lord Silvermoon's side and roared, "Tonight is the best chance for us to rise up and take back our freedom. Even if I die in battle and spill my blood over Purple Heaven Planet, this old man will not compromise." As he spoke, God Lord Silvermoon called out once more, "Everyone, although we come from different great worlds and have never met each other before, we all share the same dignity. But I believe that we all share the same dignity and pride. We are all mighty martial gods who rule over our worlds and educate millions of people, who would be willing to submit to others and become the slaves and dogs of the heaven-punishing race. These words resonated with the foreign martial gods, and countless of them nodded in agreement. When Godlord Silvermoon saw that the conscience and courage of these people had been awakened, he struck while the iron was hot. Before this, we were scattered across the various great worlds, isolated and without help. We were defeated one by the heaven-punishing race, but we were powerless to fight back. But now we are gathered together. A supreme expert like Ji Tianxing has appeared among us. By killing Marshal Jinnan without hesitation, he has already begun this war. What are you still afraid of? What are you waiting for? If you don't join him in killing Marshal Jinnan, will you ever have another chance? Unless you want to be slaves for the rest of your lives, to be humiliated and trampled upon by the heaven-punishing race. Toward the end, Godlord Silvermoon's voice grew several times louder, his tone impassioned. His voice echoed in the night sky, echoing in the ears of the non-humankind martial gods. Countless people puffed out their chests and raised their heads, revealing resolute gazes. Many martial gods even took out their divine artifacts, their bodies bursting with soaring battle intent. One roar after another came from the crowd and the sea of clouds. The Bear Clan will never be slaves. Fighting for freedom, the Battle Wolf Clan will never surrender. For the sake of peace, the elves are willing to shed their blood. The sun and moon can bear witness. I would rather die standing than live kneeling. The Heavenly Lion tribe will never back down. One hot-blooded foreign martial god after another stood at God, Lord Silvermoon's side. Within a short span of 10 breaths, more than 30 foreign race martial gods had gathered around her. As a result, the more than 40 alien martial gods who wanted to besiege Ji Tianxing completely gave up on the idea. Many martial gods walked out of the crowd and stood with God, Lord Silvermoon. In the sea of clouds, those hesitant martial gods also made up their minds to unwaveringly support God, Lord Silvermoon. Upon seeing this, God Lord Silvermoon gave a gratified smile. She turned to Ji Tianxing, a faint smile in her eyes. Her eyes seemed to be saying, "Hey, you told me to get ready, and I've done it. I didn't disappoint you, did I?" Ji Tianxing understood the look in her eyes and gave her a slight nod, a faint smile in his eyes. God Lord Silvermoon's body instantly went stiff, her heart stopping. Her eyes widened in disbelief, only one thought running through her mind. This scoundrel, he actually knows how to smile. Ever since she had interacted with Ji Tianxing, she had only found him to be mysterious, callous, stern, and arrogant. Only now did she realize that even icebergs could melt. This mysterious and aloof fellow also had a warm heart. For a moment, God Lord Silvermoon was somewhat dazed, and she looked at Ji Tianxing with eyes brimming with favor. But the southern vanquishing marshal could no longer sit still. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and he angrily cursed, "Bastard! You bunch of bastards who don't know what's good for you. You lowly insects of a foreign race. If not for bunch-wise benevolence and sparing your lives, how could you have survived until now? You actually listened to that slut's instigation and dared to make an enemy of my race? Have you considered the consequences?" The south-conquering marshal glanced at all the gods of war with a fierce look, then growled with a voice as loud as a great bell. "Don't think that you can defeat me with just one Ji Tianxing and a severely wounded feathered beast. My race is invincible. Bun Shui will quickly tear the two of them to pieces and grind their bones to dust. Now, Bun Shui will give all of you one last chance. Those who swear fealty to Bun Shui will be freed from slavery and will be richly rewarded. Those who oppose Bun Shui will all be executed, and all their subjects will be slaughtered." The rolling sound waves were like muffled thunder, flowing through the night sky, deafening everyone. The hundred-some foreign race martial gods instantly grimaced, their expressions varying. Some were filled with fear, their wills beginning to waver. Some were even angrier, and their desire to resist the heaven-punishing race intensified. Some foreign race martial gods changed their minds and prepared to fly toward the southern vanquishing marshal. At this moment, Ji Tianxing sinisterly roared. The heaven-punishing race deserves to die, and those who help the wicked are even more detestable. I will kill anyone who swears fealty to the heaven-punishing race. If you're not afraid of death, then go. As he spoke, he gripped the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand and pointed it at the restless foreign race martial gods, his entire body erupting with killing intent. The dozen or so martial gods of the alien tribes were intimidated by him. They retreated in fear. The southern vanquishing marshal was furious at this sight. Ji Tianxing, you despicable be *starred, Ben Shui will kill you first. The southern vanquishing marshal could no longer suppress his anger. With a roar, he charged toward Ji Tianxing, thrusting his blood-red halberd forward. The halberd gave off a red light that shot into the sky, turning into a sharp red light that tore through the darkness and space. "Ha ha, loser like you dares to act tough." Ji Tianxing laughed heartily as he swung the sword of burial of heaven toward the southern vanquishing marshal. Bam! The dark golden sword light that was thousands of feet long clashed with the blood-red light, creating a loud explosion that shook the 9 heavens. The berserk shockwave, wrapped in endless fragments of light, burst out in all directions, engulfing the entire area. More than 100 foreign race martial gods, more than 100 captains of the heaven-punishing fleet, and more than 1,000 black armored guard within 300 miles were all affected. No one was able to stay out of the battle. Bastard heaven-punishing dog, die. The golden rock roared furiously and turned into a golden light that charged toward the southern vanquishing marshal. It worked together with Ji Tianxing to pincer the southern vanquishing marshal. After exchanging a few blows, the two flew into the sky. Kill all the heaven-punishing dogs and take back our freedom. Godlord Silvermoon roared as she unsheathed her sword and charged at the captains of the heaven-punishing fleet. The 100 foreign race martial gods were not to be outdone, and they all charged with her. An earth-shattering battle broke out. Chapter 2584. Boom, boom, boom. Ji Tianxing, the Golden Rock, and the southern conquering marshal were fighting fiercely in the sky. Deafening explosions continued to ring out, shaking the clouds. Beams of crimson light, golden light, and blazing flames mixed with all kinds of divine arts. They kept blooming in the night sky. The area within 1,000 miles was dazzling, and the 5-color divine light was extremely dazzling. The 3 true gods unleashed their full power and used their trump cards to kill the other party as soon as possible. There were dragon claws and giant palms that covered the sky. They smashed the sky with the power to destroy everything. There were saber lights and sword shadows that were hundreds of thousands of feet long. They destroyed the sky with one strike, causing space to collapse and spatial storms to form. There were also all kinds of divine light illusions that formed thousands of images that clashed with each other. As time passed, the battle between the 3 true gods became more and more intense. The battlefield also shifted to the distance. Within a radius of several thousand miles, the night sky was shattered and filled with void storms. The terrifying shock waves of the battle destroyed the heaven-punishing divine palace. The once magnificent palaces and pavilions turned to dust and scattered across the sky. Many heaven-punishing guards were also swept away by the shock waves of the battle and turned to dust. Even many of the martial gods and heaven-punishing captains were unlucky and killed by the shock waves of the battle. Fortunately, the 3 true gods had gone far away, and the martial gods were no longer worried. However, the battle between the true gods became even more intense. The heaven-punishing divine palace had the advantage in numbers. Not only did they have more than 100 captains, but they also had more than 1,000 black armor guards. They were well-trained and experienced in battle. They cooperated well and could use all kinds of joint attacks and secret techniques smoothly. As for the more than 100 alien race martial gods, they came from different worlds. Not only were they unfamiliar with each other and did not cooperate, but even their divine power attributes were chaotic. Naturally, the combat power of the martial gods was greatly reduced. After fighting for 15 minutes, The martial gods of the other races were at a disadvantage and started to get tired of defending. Even their numbers had decreased by 40%. Only 90 martial gods were left. On the other hand, only 400 heaven-punishing guards and more than 20 captains had been killed. Moreover, as time passed, this gap continued to widen. An hour later, only 500 heaven-punishing guards and more than 100 captains remained. However, 70% of the alien martial gods had been killed. Only 40 or so martial gods were still holding on bitterly, fighting a bloody battle. They were all heavily injured, each in a more miserable state than the other, and their combat strength had weakened greatly. Left with no choice, the martial gods could only retreat towards the distant sea of clouds. His previous hot-bloodedness and surging fighting spirit had now cooled down. Many martial gods began to feel pessimistic and hopeless. Some even felt regret. However, what was done could not be undone. Now that the situation had developed to this point, there was no turning back. Only God Lord Silvermoon remained unperturbed. Even though the two old women had been killed by the captains of the heaven-slaying fleet in order to protect her. Even though she was also heavily injured, her hair was disheveled, and she was covered in blood. However, she had been holding on stubbornly, covering the rear for the many martial gods. She covered everyone's retreat while resisting the pursuit of the captain of the heaven-slaying fleet. Her injuries were worsening. Soon, another 15 minutes had passed. The two parties chased each other for thousands of miles. Everywhere they passed, the sea of clouds dissipated. Countless corpses and pieces of flesh were scattered in the night sky, and the air was filled with the thick stench of blood. There were only about 20 alien martial gods left. Meanwhile, the number of heaven-slaying fleet captains had only decreased by 10. The gap in numbers and strength between the two sides had widened even further. The outcome was decided. No matter how desperately the alien martial gods fought, only death awaited them. Many people wanted to flee, but they realized that they couldn't. 80-some captains of the heaven-slaying fleet led 400-some black-armored guards in a massive encirclement that trapped the alien martial gods. The battle came to an abrupt end. 20-some alien martial gods gathered together, their hearts filled with despair as they awaited death. The captains and guards in the night sky slowly approached, seething with killing intent. It's over. We're all dead now. Ha ha ha. This is the price of being impulsive. A moment of hot-bloodedness, but you'll soon die a miserable death in a foreign land. What a fool. A bad life is better than a good death. Compared to life, what are freedom and dignity? In this despairing atmosphere, many martial gods smiled bitterly, feeling sorry for themselves. God Lord Silvermoon had a nasty expression, her emotions extremely complicated. Their words were very grating, but she had no way of refuting them, because the truth was before her eyes. This was not her first time witnessing the power of the heaven-slaying race. She was only somewhat disappointed as she thought to herself, I didn't think that these alien martial gods would be so uncooperative and have such a low fighting power. If we could have held on for a few more hours, we might have had a chance. Alas, we're all going to die soon. Right at that moment, a general wearing golden armor walked out from among the captains of the Heaven Punisher clan. General Lei Hong gripped his broadsword as he sneered at the alien martial gods. In a mocking tone, he said, Insects of the alien races, are you finally regretting it? You've already seen the invincible strength of my race, so why seek your own deaths? My race is benevolent. Even though you betrayed my race, this general will still give you a chance to live. Hearing this, the 20 or so martial gods of the alien tribes who had been in despair suddenly became spirited. Their eyes were filled with hope. Only God Lord Silvermoon realized that the situation was bad, and her eyes flashed with cold light. As expected, General Lei Hong sneered and said, This god knows that you don't want to die. You are very willing to serve my race. It's just that you were muddle-headed for some bastard's instigation and betrayal. Now, hand over that bastard, and this god will spare your lives. This god will execute that bastard in front of everyone and give him the death penalty. As General Lei Hong spoke, the 20-some foreign martial gods all turned to God Lord Silvermoon. Even the martial gods of other races, standing beside her, had retreated far away. God Lord Silvermoon was instantly isolated, standing alone in the night sky. General Lei Hong savagely stared at her, his eyes brimming with bloodthirsty, killing intent. "Ha, that's right, it was you." The alien martial gods all began to beg for mercy or rebuke God, Lord Silvermoon. "General, we were all instigated. Please forgive us for our impulsiveness." "Lord General, as long as you spare our lives, we'll pledge our loyalty to you and never betray you." "That slut, you're the one who killed everyone. Kneel and accept your death." "Right? If she hadn't instigated everyone, how could we have done such a foolish thing?" The alien martial gods were all agitated. As they tried to curry favor with General Lei Hong, they tried to drive God Lord Silvermoon away so that they could draw a clear line between them and her. God Lord Silvermoon was not angry. She calmly scanned the area, and when she saw the alien martial gods, she instantly understood. Those hot-blooded martial gods who had staunchly supported her and Ji Tianxing had all died in battle long ago. The surviving martial gods were basically those who were indecisive and shameless, who even wanted to besiege Ji Tianxing. Chapter 2585. In the sky, the battle between Ji Tianxing, the Golden Rock, and the South Conquering Marshal had reached its most intense moment. They had exchanged tens of thousands of blows, and the battlefield had spanned 20,000 miles. The mountains and rivers had shattered, and the night sky had collapsed. Of course, both of them had suffered serious injuries. Ji Tianxing's body was covered with wounds. His golden body, which was hundreds of meters tall, was covered with crisscrossing wounds, from which golden blood kept flowing out. However, he turned a blind eye to his injuries and continued to fight while bathed in blood. His long hair fluttered in the wind. He held the 300-meter-long heaven-burying sword and attacked wildly with an imposing aura. The sword radiance swept across 3,000 miles, and the surging divine power shook the clouds. The Golden Rock was also covered in blood. Numerous wounds covered his entire body. Even its wide wings were filled with cracks and holes, from which golden divine blood continuously flowed out. However, it didn't seem to feel any pain. It completely ignored its injuries and attacked crazily. It didn't care even if it hurt 800 of its enemies and 1,000 of its own. It couldn't help it. Its hatred for the South Conquering Marshal was too deep. It couldn't be washed clean even with all the water in the world. In comparison, the South Conquering Marshal was in a more tragic situation. Even if he used a secret technique to transform into a giant black beast and showed his terrifying side, he couldn't escape from being seriously injured. There wasn't a piece of intact flesh on his body, and most of the black scales on his body had been removed. His wide left palm had been cut off, and there was a hideous wound on his right shoulder. His bones could be seen clearly. Even his huge head had been cut off by the burial of heaven. He had lost his ears and half of his face. Even so, he didn't fear or retreat. He was still brave and unparalleled. In the face of Ji Tianxing and the Golden Rock's pincer attack, he tried his best to resist and was always on the verge of death. Finally, the two sides had exchanged hundreds of blows. Ji Tianxing finally found an opportunity to seize the South Conquering Marshal's weakness and decisively used his ultimate secret technique, God slaying. He suddenly raised his left palm and shot out a dazzling golden light toward the South Conquering Marshal's chest. Swish! That dazzling golden light was very small, only the length of a finger, but it was extremely dazzling. It flashed in the night sky and disappeared. The South Conquering Marshal immediately realized that something was wrong. He sensed that death was coming. His divine soul was cold. At the critical moment, he didn't hesitate to use teleport. He wanted to travel through the alternate space and change his position. However, it was already too late. The speed and power of the god-slaying flying dagger were pushed to the extreme by Ji Tianxing. Boom! With a deafening muffled sound, a golden light pierced into the Southern Expedition Marshal's chest. Incomparably hard black scales, thick flesh, and divine bones that had been tempered thousands of times were all unable to block the god-slaying flying dagger's attack. The palm-sized golden flying dagger pierced into his chest 10 meters deep, bringing out a spray of dark red blood that sprinkled into the night sky. However, the impact of the flying dagger was neutralized, and it couldn't penetrate Marshal Jinan's body. Seeing this, Marshal Jinan grunted and immediately used his divine power. He wanted to use his flesh and divine bones to clamp the flying dagger firmly. Ji Tianxing controlled the flying dagger decisively. It exploded with destructive power in Marshal Jinan's chest. Boom! With an earth-shattering explosion, Marshal Jinan's chest was blown into a crater that had a radius of 10 meters. Countless pieces of flesh and broken bones splattered into the night sky as if there was a rainstorm. The huge impact made Marshal Jinan's body tremble. He couldn't help but fly backward and fall into the ruins 30 miles away. Plop! His 1,000-meter-tall body was like a mountain. He landed heavily on the ruins, kicking up dust into the air. He curled up in the deep pit, his body buried in dust. He was still trembling as he let out a painful roar. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing and the Golden Rock both let out a sigh of relief. Marshal Jinan has been severely injured. His combat ability must have decreased greatly. Tonight will be the day he dies. As long as we kill him, Zhixiao planet will be saved. The man and the bird communicated with each other using their divine consciousness. Just then, Marshal Jinan struggled a few times and climbed out of the crater. Swoosh! He shook his body a few times to shake off the dust on his body. Even though there was a huge bloody hole in his chest, after using a special secret technique, he became full of energy again. Although the wound looked ferocious and fatal, it wasn't much of a threat to him. He, Marshal Jinan, stood high in the sky and looked down at Ji Tianxing and the Golden Rock. He sneered in a hoarse voice. "Little bastard, do you think Ben Shuai is the same as the other martial gods? Do you think Ben Shuai's chest is his Achilles heel? Ha ha ha! You're too naive. Ben Shuai is a true god with an immortal body." Marshal Jinan pointed at the bloody hole in his chest and the wounds all over his body. He sneered. "Can these superficial wounds hurt Ben Shuai? What a joke. Even if Ben Shuai is cut in half and his head is chopped off, he can still kill you two bastards." As he finished speaking, he raised his head and roared at the sky. Dark purple divine fire burned all over his body, releasing a terrifying wave of divine power. His thunderous roar reverberated in the sky, shaking the earth and shattering the night sky. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing's expression became even more serious, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The Golden Rock's eyes turned even colder. After hesitating for a while, he said to Ji Tianxing, "The physical bodies of the Heaven Punishers are unparalleled. They are almost immortal. Marshal Jinan is right. He is a true god expert. Even if we cut him into pieces, he can still survive. If we want to kill him, we have to blast him into pieces." The Golden Rock's tone was very low, containing a hint of decisiveness. Ji Tianxing immediately realized that something was wrong. He hurriedly asked, "Golden Rock, what are you trying to do?" The Golden Rock did not answer. He only said in a low voice, "Tianxing, I'll leave the rest to you. I hope you can save Zhixiao planet." As he finished speaking, he raised his head to the sky and let out a long cry. Then he slowly closed his wings. Then golden divine fire burned all over his body and rose fiercely. It was as if there was a power in his body that had been dormant for tens of thousands of years. It immediately awakened and surged out like a volcano. The dazzling golden divine fire wrapped around his slender body, making him look like a giant golden flaming sword. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing immediately understood the Golden Rock's intention. He shouted anxiously, "Golden Rock, stop. We still have a chance. Why do you have to do this?" The Golden Rock turned around and glanced at him. He said calmly, "No, this is the only way to kill him. I've said it before. As long as I can kill Marshal Jinan, I will do it at any cost." After saying that, It flew across the night sky without hesitation and charged towards the Southern Marshal. Chapter 2586. The golden rock burned all of its divine power and lifespan to unleash its strongest power. It even ignited the divine beast blood of the Golden Rock clan to unleash its power to the maximum. It was like a giant golden sword that could split heaven and earth. It charged toward the Southern Expedition Marshal with an unstoppable momentum. This moment was the most glorious and dazzling moment of its life. But it was also the last moment of its life. The Southern Expedition Marshal was using a secret technique. He roared with his head held high. His body was burning with purple divine fire and was accumulating mighty divine power. When the golden rock charged toward him in a suicidal manner, he was stunned for a moment. His eyes were filled with disbelief. He couldn't believe that the golden rock would be so decisive to self-destruct. After coming back to his senses, he quickly retreated as fast as he could. However, he was stabbed in the face by the golden rock when he was only 20 miles away. Boom! The golden rock stabbed into the Southern Expedition Marshal's chest like a giant sword. There was a loud explosion that shook the sky. The bloody hole in the Southern Expedition Marshal's chest was torn open on the spot and expanded 20 times. The golden rock drilled into his chest and pierced through his majestic body. Its sharp beak came out from his back. The violent and unparalleled force of impact sent Marshal Nanjinan flying backward. The excruciating pain made him tremble. He looked up and roared in pain. But this wasn't the end. In the next moment, the golden rock's body exploded. It turned into endless golden divine flames that exploded inside the Southern Expedition Marshal's body. The golden rock had self-destructed. Boom! The Southern Conquering Marshal's body was instantly blasted into hundreds of pieces, splashing in all directions. The golden divine flames formed by the golden rock's self-destruction were like the sun. They swallowed hundreds of pieces of flesh and covered thousands of miles. The shock wave was so violent that it sent Ji Tianxing flying a few hundred miles away, crashing heavily into the ruins. He got up from the ruins. He was bleeding from his 7 orifices. His vision was blurry and his consciousness was hazy. He couldn't even walk properly. Fortunately, he was a few hundred miles away from the center of the explosion. He was only injured by the shock wave. If he was too close, he would also be seriously injured by the golden rock's self-detonation. He might even faint on the spot. After all, the power of a true god powerhouse's self-detonation was truly apocalyptic. The divine flames that blotted out the sky and covered thousands of miles of heaven and earth lasted for a long time before dissipating. The incomparably blazing golden light was like a scorching sun, illuminating an area of 100,000 miles as if it was daytime. After a long while, the dazzling golden divine flames gradually dissipated. Everything was over. The golden rock completely dissipated between heaven and earth, and the Southern Expedition Marshal also turned into hundreds of pieces of debris, scattering over thousands of miles. Ji Tianxing dragged his heavily injured body and flew back and forth in the sky. He carefully searched for the pieces of the Southern Expedition Marshal's corpse. The life force of the Heaven Punishers was too strong. In order to prevent the Southern Expedition Marshal from rising from the ashes, Ji Tianxing could only find the pieces of his corpse and burn them with a divine flame. Only then could he prevent any future troubles. A quarter of an hour later, Ji Tianxing searched through the entire area and only found about 100 pieces of corpses. The rest of the corpses had been burned to nothingness by the golden rock's self-detonation. The surviving corpses still possessed a tenacious life force. If Ji Tianxing did not deal with them, these corpses would move on their own and gather together to form a broken body. If the Southern Expedition Marshal went into hiding to recover for another 1,000 years, he might be able to return to his peak. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing had destroyed the corpses. With this, the Southern Expedition Marshal was completely obliterated and truly dead. After taking care of this matter, Ji Tianxing immediately turned and flew into the distance. He had not forgotten that God Lord Silvermoon and the 100-some foreign martial gods were still fighting with the heaven-punishing captains. Whoosh! 100 seconds later, Ji Tianxing returned to the original battlefield. The sky was still covered in cracks, and the ground was covered in ruins and craters. Only the foreign martial gods and the heaven-punishing captains were nowhere to be seen. With a sweep of his spiritual sense, Ji Tianxing was able to determine the direction of the foreign martial gods through the traces left behind in the world and hurriedly pursued. After chasing for 20,000 li, he saw a massive group of black silhouettes in the sky. Even from 2,000 li, he could see them clearly. Dozens of silver-armored captains and more than 400 black armor guards formed a circle and surrounded the 20 or so martial gods of the alien tribes. His heart thumped at this sight, and he couldn't help but think, only 20-some of the 100-some foreign martial gods are left. They were defeated so quickly and so miserably. He quickly flew to the center of the battlefield. Only when he was still 100 li away from the martial gods did he realize that something was wrong. The heaven-punishing captains and the black armor guards were superior in numbers, but they only surrounded the foreign martial gods and did not attack. The 20-some foreign martial gods also seemed to be divided. The 20-some of them had retreated, and they were even standing next to a golden-armored general of the heaven-punishing, trying to curry favor with him. As for the martial god, who had been isolated by everyone else, he stood alone in the night sky, enduring endless pressure. Her body was covered in wounds and stained with blood, her hair in disarray, and she looked like a man made of blood. But she still straightened her body, stubbornly raised her head, and calmly faced the golden-armored general. Her resolve, her arrogance, and her composure were all so dazzling and brilliant. Even though she was surrounded by several hundred people, she still could not block out the divine light that came from her bones. In comparison, those 20-some foreign martial gods of various appearances were so ugly and nauseating in Ji Tianxing's eyes. A seething, killing intent and fury surged up from Ji Tianxing's heart and into his head. His face cold, he gripped the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand and charged into the encirclement. At this moment, the golden-armored General Lei Hong was sneering as he raised his saber and prepared to execute God, Lord Silvermoon. Whoosh! His saber exploded with dark red light as it slashed at God Lord Silvermoon's head with an unstoppable might. She knew that her death was certain, but she did not just sit there and wait for it. Erupting with all the divine power in her body, she swung her sword to meet the attack. She gripped her divine sword with both hands and was about to clash with General Lei Hong's saber. At this critical moment, a dazzling golden sword light suddenly cut through the night sky and struck the long saber with a loud bang. Boom! The long saber was immediately sent flying, rolling and smashing 10 miles away. The incomparably violent impact shook General Lei Hong to the point he staggered, and his entire right arm became numb and stiff. Plush! Before General Lei Hong could react, God Lord Silvermoon's divine sword had stabbed into his shoulder and lodged itself in his golden armor. This sudden turn of events left everyone dumbfounded. Several dozen ship captains, 20-some foreign martial gods, General Lei Hong, and God Lord Silvermoon all turned to the side. A human youth dressed in a white robe, his hair disheveled and his body covered in blood, holding a mysterious black sword, appeared next to God Lord Silvermoon. Chapter 2587. The white-robed youth's clothes were disheveled, his body covered in blood, and he looked rather wretched. But his body was as straight as a sword, his eyes as bright as the stars, and his body exuded an unyielding and domineering aura that looked down on all living things. An invisible and powerful pressure began to spread through the world. He was 8 feet tall, but he was like a massive mountain that towered over the world, and one could only look up at him. Everyone present, whether they were martial gods of foreign races or the captains of the heaven-punishing warships, felt deep respect and dread. Everyone understood that this white-robed youth was no martial god. He had surpassed the martial god realm and reached the true god realm. Even if he was covered in wounds, even if he only had a sliver of divine power left, he could still easily kill anyone present. For a moment, the air seemed to freeze. Everyone was silent, warily gripping their weapons as they silently retreated. Only God, Lord Silvermoon, stared at Ji Tianxing with blazing eyes, his dim and gloomy eyes suddenly shining with a bright light and a layer of mist. She had originally believed that she was powerless to reverse the situation and that her death was certain. She only felt regret. Even though she and so many other foreign race martial gods had died in battle, they had not been able to hold down the heaven-punishing warships. But now, she had no regrets. Ji Tianxing had returned alive, which meant that the southern vanquishing marshal had been killed. At the very least, he had been defeated and had fled. In this case, the sacrifice of the hundred-some foreign race martial gods had been worth it. With Ji Tianxing standing in front of her, she felt extremely safe and warm. Even though she was surrounded by several hundred heaven-punishing experts, she felt no fear. Her absolute trust in Ji Tianxing had reached the point of blindness. She had no doubt that, even in the face of tens of thousands of heaven-punishing experts, Ji Tianxing would be able to slaughter his way out. General Lei Hong and the heaven-punishing warships quickly came to their senses. Everyone knew that Ji Tianxing and the Golden Rock had worked together to besiege the southern vanquishing marshal and had been fighting for a very long time. Now that Ji Tianxing had returned, the southern vanquishing marshal had not appeared. General Lei Hong and the heaven-punishing warships all had an ominous feeling. "Kid, you're still alive?" General Lei Hong looked at Ji Tianxing in shock. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Ji Tianxing looked askance at him, the corners of his mouth hooked up into a sneer. "Otherwise, who do you think could have survived?" The bodies of General Lei Hong and the other captains trembled, and their expressions became even more unsightly. Ji Tianxing's words confirmed their suspicions. However, no one could accept this reality, let alone believe Ji Tianxing's words. General Lei Hong hesitated for a moment, then shouted with a stern tone, "Ji Tianxing, stop keeping me in suspense. Tell me, were you seriously injured by our marshal and fled here?" In the eyes of him and the other captains, the Southern Expedition Marshal was invincible and invincible. No matter what, it was impossible for the Southern Expedition Marshal to lose to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing's sneer deepened, and he said contemptuously, "Stop deceiving yourselves. Your Southern Expedition Marshal has already been crushed into pieces and completely fallen, and you're just a bunch of stray dogs. Don't make any more pointless struggles. Just surrender obediently." His words completely shattered the fantasy of General Lei Hong and the other captains, and also killed the last trace of hope in their hearts. There was an uproar among the captains. All of them revealed shocked, fearful, and worried expressions as they exclaimed in disgust. Even more than 400 black-armored warriors began to whisper to each other. Everyone was inexplicably shocked and could not believe it. General Lei Hong looked as if he was struck by lightning. His face was pale as he stood rooted to the ground. He muttered to himself, "Impossible. I don't believe that the Grand Marshal will never lose. Ji Tianxing, don't talk nonsense." As he said that, he snatched the saber of a captain beside him and shouted loudly, "Everyone, don't listen to his nonsense. The Grand Marshal is immortal. How can he fall? Everyone, attack together and kill Ji Tianxing. Then, we will help the Grand Marshal to kill the strong enemy." Although many captains and black-armored warriors had guessed that the Southern Expedition Marshal was most likely dead, they were still delusional and delusional. They were unwilling to accept this fact and were willing to believe in General Lei Hong. Immediately, many captains and black-armored warriors raised their weapons and shouted at the top of their lungs, Kill Ji Tianxing and make a contribution. Whoever can kill him will be rewarded with the position of Deputy Marshal. Everyone, charge!" In the dark night sky, the deafening battle cries reverberated. The next moment, General Lei Hong took the lead and waved his saber to kill Ji Tianxing. The 80-some silver-armored captains also waved their sabers and Kenshin weapons as they roared and charged. Countless sabers and swords flashed in the night sky as they slashed at Ji Tianxing and God Lord Silvermoon from every direction. The two of them were immediately engulfed in red light. 20-some foreign martial gods were afraid that they would be caught in the crossfire and hurriedly retreated. As the sabers and swords came at him, Ji Tianxing grabbed the heavily injured god, Lord Silvermoon, with his left hand and vanished. Whoosh! A moment later, he and God, Lord Silvermoon, teleported 50 li away and appeared outside the encirclement. The sabers and swords all missed and slashed at the ground below. Bang! 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 Muffled sounds burst out. Hundreds of gullies were cut into the ground, and dozens of large pits appeared. Dust exploded into the air, engulfing the night sky. God Lord Silvermoon had dodged a calamity, but he still looked in fear at the heaven punishers and messaged Ji Tianxing, "What are you stopping for? Why aren't you using this chance to escape?" Escape? Ji Tianxing glanced at her, a playful smile on his lips. They're the ones who should be escaping. As he spoke, he gripped the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand and unleashed 36 dazzling beams of golden light at the heaven punishers several dozen li away. God Lord Silvermoon froze for a moment, and then she anxiously asked, "Are you crazy? You're so severely injured, and there are still several hundred of them." However, before she could finish her sentence, she stopped abruptly, because when Ji Tianxing's 36 beams of sword light struck the heaven punishers, they instantly exploded with blood. Bang, 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 bang. 10-some silver armor captains and 30-some black-armored warriors were struck by the dazzling beams of sword light and instantly pulverized. Hundreds of pieces of flesh and blood splattered into the sky, outlining a shocking scene. General Lei Hong and the other captains immediately turned to Ji Tianxing, locked onto his energy with their divine senses, and launched another attack. Kill! Kill him! Hurry and surround him! Don't let him escape! Everyone screamed at the top of their lungs and rushed over recklessly like a raging torrent. Ji Tianxing was fearless. Instead of retreating, he charged forward with the sword of burial of heaven. God Lord Silvermoon stood where she was, her eyes flashing as she gazed at that not very tall but abnormally valiant figure. She couldn't help but mutter, "Only he is worthy of being called a hero, right?" Chapter 2588. God Lord Silvermoon had seen countless prodigies and experts in her life. However, none of the geniuses and experts were comparable to Ji Tianxing. He was like the blazing sun in the highest heavens, more dazzling and dazzling than any star. He had a mysterious background, a proud and arrogant personality, but he was also powerful and domineering in his methods. Just as he had said, he was the nightmare of all his enemies. Even though he was fighting alone against several dozen captains and 400-some black-armored warriors, he was still unstoppable and invincible. God Lord Silvermoon had no reason to believe that he would emerge victorious and kill all the heaven-seeking experts. Reality proved that her intuition was correct. Ji Tianxing was like a tiger in a flock of sheep, boldly charging into the crowd. He fiercely attacked, using both his fists and his sword to unleash divine arts that blotted out the heavens. It was like a torrential golden torrent, rampaging through the night sky and wreaking havoc. Wherever he went, no one could stop him. Any heaven-seeking expert struck by this golden flood, whether they were the black-armored warriors or the silver-armored captains, was either killed or wounded. Flowers of blood, mixed with broken limbs, splattered into the sky. Mournful wails rang out one after another in the night sky, spreading in all directions. The number of heaven-seeking experts was rapidly dwindling. On the other hand, General Lei Hong and the heaven-seeking experts could not even touch Ji Tianxing's shadow. Even when their sabers and swords descended, 70 to 80% of them were dodged by him. Only 20 to 30% of the attacks managed to hit him, but they were unable to do any real damage. They were no different from scratching an itch. General Lei Hong and the heaven-seeking experts were deeply shocked and despair by this result. Many of them had lost all will to fight and were only thinking of retreating. Even the foreign martial gods hiding in the distance felt their scalps go numb and their hands and feet go cold. Some of the more quick-witted people had already predicted that the heaven-seeking race would be defeated and began to think of fleeing. While no one was paying attention, they began to quietly retreat, hoping to use the cover of the night to escape. But at this moment, Ji Tianxing chased after a few heavily injured silver-armored captains and charged straight at them. He was like a golden hurricane sweeping across the night sky. Along the way, many powerful cultivators of the Heaven Destroyers were crushed into pieces. Those foreign race martial gods who tried to escape were also swept away by the golden hurricane and died without leaving behind any corpses. The surviving martial gods of the alien tribes were scared out of their wits on the spot. They hurriedly ran away while screaming at the top of their lungs. You killed the wrong person. We are not the Heaven Punisher clan. It has nothing to do with us. True God Tianxing, spare my life. However, Ji Tianxing had no intention of letting them go. Swish, swish, a dazzling golden hurricane swept past, engulfing everything within a radius of several hundred kilometers. The dozen or so martial gods of the alien races who had fled in all directions were also killed. They were all turned into pieces of flesh and blood that scattered all over the sky. Seeing this, General Lei Hong and the experts of the Heaven Punisher were stunned for a moment, and they all looked confused. Similar thoughts flashed through everyone's minds. Has this scoundrel gone berserk? Has he forgotten about friend and foe? Only God Lord Silvermoon understood that Ji Tianxing was doing this on purpose. He was doing this to avenge her, to help her vent her anger. She was rather moved by this, and a warm current flowed through her heart. She no longer watched from the sidelines. After taking a divine pill to suppress her injuries, she took up her sword and joined the battle. Although she couldn't be like Ji Tianxing, who could bravely charge into the crowd and start massacre, she could still ambush and assassinate the black-armored warriors from the edge of the battlefield. Occasionally, a heavily injured silver-armored captain would take advantage of the chaos to flee the battlefield, but she would also kill him. Time quickly passed. Soon, 30 minutes had passed. More than half of the experts of the Heaven Punisher had been slain. More than 50 captains and more than 200 black-armored warriors had been killed by Ji Tianxing. Even their leader, General Lei Hong, had been cut into pieces by the sword of the Burial of Heaven and killed on the spot. The remaining captains and black-armored warriors were completely terrified. Everyone no longer had the slightest will to fight. They were all frightened to the point of retreating in panic and fleeing in all directions. Ji Tianxing and God Lord Silvermoon pursued, traversing 3,000 li and killing 10-some captains and more than 100 black-armored warriors. In the end, only 8 captains and 100-some black-armored warriors managed to escape. Ji Tianxing did not continue the pursuit. Putting away the sword of the Burial of Heaven, he returned to God Lord Silvermoon's side. After this battle, his injuries had worsened, and his divine power was almost completely drained. His face was very pale, his aura extremely weak, and his eyes were dim and lifeless. Upon seeing this, God Lord Silvermoon hurriedly took out 4 divine pills that could restore divine power and stuffed them into his hands. Ji Tianxing was just about to explain that he did not need divine pills and could use origin stones to quickly recover. But God Lord Silvermoon looked at him with concern and urged, "Don't say anything. Hurry and take these divine pills to recover. Don't leave any side effects that might affect your divine foundation." Seeing her so worried, Ji Tianxing couldn't bear to refuse her kindness, so he took all 4 divine pills. The 2 of them then left the ruined battlefield and flew off into the distance. By the time dawn finally arrived, the 2 of them had already vanished over the horizon. Half a day later, Ji Tianxing and God Lord Silvermoon entered the Zero Continent. The 2 of them found a desolate place and secluded themselves to recover. For the next half a month, the 2 of them continued to circulate their energy and did not show their faces again. By this time, the news of the destruction of the heaven-punishing divine palace and the death of the southern conquering marshal had already spread across the Zero Continent. Such explosive news was like a heaven-shaking bomb, causing a huge uproar on the continent. Whether it was the remaining experts of the heaven-punishing divine palace or the martial artists and commoners of the continent, they all found this hard to believe and shock. No one dared to believe that the powerful southern conquering marshal, who had swept across the entire star field, had been killed by someone. Back then, the countless martial gods of Purple Firmament Star had been led by heavenly venerate Purple Firmament to fight against the heaven-punishing fleet for 40-some years, but they had still failed to kill the southern conquering marshal. But now, the southern conquering marshal had been killed by the golden divine bird and the sword of a human youth. This was an astonishing piece of news that would shock the ages. For a moment, the martial artists and commoners of the various races rejoiced and began to loudly proclaim this news. Countless rebels appeared, attacking and killing the experts of the heaven-punishing divine palace in an attempt to regain their lost land and freedom. The remaining experts of the heaven-punishing divine palace were terrified by this news and began to flee in all directions. The heaven-punishing divine palace had been destroyed, and the southern conquering marshal was dead. They had lost their powerful backing and no longer dared to linger. All they wanted to do was leave Purple Firmament Star as quickly as possible. A massive rebellion, in which almost every citizen was a soldier, erupted on the Zero Continent. As the news spread to the other continents, the other 4 continents began to seethe. Chapter 2589. In just 1 month, the news had spread to all the continents. The heaven-punishing experts guarding the other 4 continents were all grief-stricken, and their morale was in tatters. Under the lead of many experts, the martial artists and common people of the various races joined together to resist the rule of the heaven-punishing race. Once again, the entire population was a soldier and morale was high. The heaven-punishing experts had lost their morale and naturally did not dare to continue fighting. They were quickly defeated. Large numbers of heaven-punishing experts were killed, many warships were destroyed, and countless slaves were freed. The surviving heaven-punishing experts took their warships and desperately fled Violet Cloud Planet. The martial artists and common people of the various races used an entire 3 months to completely eliminate the heaven-punishing race. Soon after, the various continents began to rise. Countless experts emerged from the war and became the leaders of the various factions, tribes, and empires. Empire after Divine Kingdom was born, and the 5 continents of Violet Cloud Planet were reshuffled, establishing a new order. In at most a few years, the turmoil in the 5 continents would be pacified. At that time, the various divine kingdoms and races would enter a state of recuperation, and peace would return to Violet Cloud Planet. But everyone understood that peace had been restored to Violet Cloud Planet, and the 5 continents had been freed from the rule of the heaven-punishing race entirely because of the golden divine bird and that human youth. If that human youth and the golden divine bird had not successfully killed the southern conquering marshal, how could Violet Cloud Planet have been freed? The 5 continents had more than 100 races and several dozen saint emperors and godlords. But in the minds of all these experts, that human youth was their leader. Many godlords had even sent out emissaries to inquire about the whereabouts of that human youth. They wanted to express their gratitude to him in person and invite him to be the guardian of Violet Cloud Planet. Alas, the emissaries of the various god lords scoured the 5 continents, but found no trace of the human youth. In the depths of the Zero Continent, in a nameless mountain range, between 2 lofty mountains was a waterfall more than 1,000 feet high, rapidly descending like a jade belt. Below the waterfall was a clear pool of water, surrounded by round jade stones of various sizes. At this moment, Ji Tianxing and God Lord Silvermoon were seated on a large millstone next to the pool. The 2 of them sat side by side, facing the quiet pool and the waterfall that fell from the sky 3 kilometers away. Their expressions were extremely relaxed and content. After a month of closed-door recuperation, the 2 of them had mostly recovered from their injuries. Ji Tianxing stared at the pool. His body was very relaxed, but his expression was thoughtful. God Lord Silvermoon sat next to him, her arms wrapped around her calves as she pressed down on her skirt. She seemed a little cautious. Although she looked relaxed on the surface, she was actually a little nervous on the inside. There was also a trace of inexplicable joy. From time to time, she would sneak a peek at Ji Tianxing's side profile before quickly retracting her gaze and lowering her head. After all, as the divine master of the Moon Spirit clan, she had never been so close to any man before. That's right. Even if she was just sitting next to Ji Tianxing, it was too intimate for her. In her mind, there were two completely different thoughts that were hesitating and struggling. On one side was the rules of the Moon Spirit clan and the dignity of a God Lord, constantly reminding her that she could not be so close to a strange man and that she needed to maintain a sufficient distance. On the other side, there was a throbbing from the depths of her heart. She very much enjoyed the feeling of being trusted and protected, and she was extremely addicted to it. Alas, even after these two thoughts intertwined for a very long time, they still could not decide a winner. She could only sit there stiffly. She couldn't get too close, but she also couldn't get too far away. As her thoughts were wandering, a wisp of light suddenly flew over from the horizon and landed in front of Ji Tianxing. The five-colored wisp of light floated in the air and began to spin. God Lord Silvermoon glanced at it and saw that the wisp of light was wrapped in a black jade slip. Ji Tianxing extended his right hand and took the jade slip. After reading the information within with his divine sense, he relaxed his brow and smiled. It's been 1 month. The majority of the Heaven Punishers left on Purple Heaven Star have been killed, and a small number have escaped. Based on the current situation, it will only take a few more months for the Heaven Punishers to be completely wiped out. After this, many empires and divine kingdoms will emerge from the 5 continents, and the situation will gradually become peaceful. Upon hearing this, God Lord Silvermoon turned to him and asked, "Did your companions send you a message?" Ji Tianxing nodded and explained, "They followed my orders and went to the other continents to kill Heaven Punishers and gather information." So that's how it is. God Lord Silvermoon nodded, and then he suddenly thought of something and was shocked. You already made your plans? Could it be that you predicted the outcome before you attempted to assassinate Marshal Jinan? Ji Tianxing only gave a slight nod and said nothing more. God Lord Silvermoon was even more shocked, and his mind was in turmoil. Heavens! He was actually so confident. He was so sure that he could kill Marshal Jinan. After a few moments of silence, God Lord Silvermoon frowned and warned, "Tianxing, although Marshal Jinan is dead and the Heaven Punishers have withdrawn from Purple Heaven Star, you are still a threat. But you still can't let your guard down." Oh, Ji Tianxing raised an eyebrow and seriously looked at her. You mean to say that the Heaven Punishers still have a backup plan and will return? God Lord Silvermoon gave a firm nod and solemnly said, "The Heaven Punishers are far more powerful than you or I imagined. Marshal Jinan is extremely powerful to us, but in the Heaven Punishers, he is only one of many experts." Ji Tianxing gave a slight nod and said, "Based on what I know, the leader of the Heaven Punishers is called Great Emperor Heaven Punishers, and he has several marshals under his command who are skilled in battle. Great Emperor Heaven Punishers is brimming with ambition and seeks to conquer all 3,000 worlds. He ordered each marshal to lead a huge fleet and invade the major star zones one by one. Marshal Jinan was responsible for conquering the Purple Heaven Star Zone, but now that he is dead, the fleet under his command is in tatters. In the short term, they will not dare to return without a true god leading them." God Lord Silvermoon nodded. "Your understanding of the Heaven Punishers is not as bad as I imagined. However, you have missed out on an extremely important point. There is another important reason why the Heaven Punishers are so powerful and have the ambition to conquer all 3,000 worlds. That is, the Heaven Punishers are protected by divine grace, the strongest race that has received the divine decree." Divine grace? Divine decree? Ji Tianxing frowned in confusion as he playfully asked, "How come I've never heard of this before? Who gave the divine decree to the Heaven Punishers?" God Lord Silvermoon did not hear the hidden meaning in his words and solemnly explained, Very few people know of this matter, and I happen to be one of them. The Heaven Punishers were originally the strongest race in the Heaven Punisher star zone. Around 900 years ago, something happened in the upper realm that caused even the gods to be shaken. Later on, divine grace descended from the heavens and enveloped the Heaven Punishers, and a god sent down a decree. Chapter 2590. Ji Tianqing frowned at God, Lord Silvermoon's mention of the divine decree and the protection of divine grace, as he vaguely understood something. He calmly stared at the pool, many thoughts running through his mind. 1,000 years ago, the battle of the gods affected the three realms. After my death, the power structure of the god realm must have undergone a massive shift. Not long after that, 900 some years ago, the god realm sent down a divine decree to protect the heaven punishing race. Who sent down the divine decree? And who won the final victory and took control of the god realm? Was it him, or her, or that it? Did the person who sent down the divine decree want the heaven punishing race to be their spokesperson? But if they controlled the god realm, why do they need to control the 3,000 mortal worlds? Just what happened in the god realm after my death? All sorts of questions filled Ji Tianqing's mind, making him both anxious and helpless. At this moment, he only wanted to activate the laws of the world and ascend to the god realm so that he could unravel all the mysteries. But God Lord Silvermoon broke his train of thought. Tianqing? What's wrong? Ji Tianqing came back to his senses and calmly shook his head. It's nothing. God Lord Silvermoon stared at him, her voice tinged with concern. Your complexion was very unsightly just now. Are you feeling unwell? Or did your injuries relapse? Ji Tianqing indifferently replied, a true god like me has long since recovered from illness, and my injuries can't possibly relapse. You're worrying too much. God Lord Silvermoon could see that he had something on his mind, but he was unwilling to reveal it. She pursed her lips, lowered her head, and asked no more. The two of them were silent, and the mood was rather awkward. After a long while, God Lord Silvermoon asked, Tianqing, the heaven punishing race has been wiped out and purple firmament star is free. What do you plan to do next? Ji Tianqing pointed up at the sky and playfully smiled. I heard long ago that purple firmament star has a purple firmament cave that resides high above the heavens. It is the abode of celestial, venerable purple firmament. After the heaven punishing race invaded, the southern vanquishing marshal seized control of that place. I have to personally make a trip to Purple Heaven Cave and see if there are any survivors of the heaven punishing race there. God Lord Silvermoon froze for a moment. Then he smiled. That's not a bad idea. The Purple Heaven Cave is the most mysterious place on the entire Purple Heaven star. Heavenly venerable purple firmament had lived there for tens of thousands of years. It must have been built like a divine realm. There might even be a large number of natural treasures hidden there. By the way, if you occupy the Purple Cloud Cave, you will be the new Purple Cloud Heavenly Sovereign, the guardian of the Purple Cloud planet. Guardian? Ji Tianqing arched his eyebrows and chuckled. I'm not from the Purple Cloud Star. Why should I occupy the Purple Cloud Cave and protect the Purple Cloud Star? God Lord Silvermoon was flabbergasted and asked in confusion. But you were the one who saved the tens of billions of people on the 5 continents of Purple Heaven Star. You risked your life to save the Purple Cloud planet. Don't you want to be the planet lord? Ha! Ji Tianqing softly chuckled and shook his head. What God Lord, planet lord? They're just empty titles. God Lord Silvermoon frowned and worriedly asked, you mean to say that once you finish investigating the Purple Cloud Cave, you will leave the Purple Cloud planet? Ji Tianqing did not hide anything and nodded. God Lord Silvermoon grew even more worried. But you clearly know that the heaven punishing race will not let this matter rest. They will soon send an even more powerful fleet to attack the Purple Cloud planet. If you just leave like this, the Purple Cloud planet will still be occupied by the heaven punishing race. Ji Tianqing calmly said, the heaven punishing race is too powerful. Dealing with them is not something that can be done in a day or two, and it is certainly not something that can be resolved in 1 or 2 battles. I am not the savior of the world, So how can I protect the purple cloud planet forever? This, God Lord Silvermoon was at a loss for words, not knowing how to persuade him. She was keenly aware that Ji Tianxing had already done a great favor by saving the purple cloud planet once. Ji Tianxing truly did not have any obligation or responsibility to protect the purple cloud planet forever. Moreover, she was not a member of the purple cloud planet. She could not represent the tens of billions of people of the purple cloud planet and beg Ji Tianxing to stay. Seeing that she was somewhat depressed, Ji Tianxing stood up and calmly said, I am going to the purple cloud cave. If you have nothing else to say, let's part ways here. God Lord Silvermoon was flabbergasted once more as she subconsciously asked, You're not taking me with you? Ji Tianxing turned to her and frowned in confusion. When did I say that I would take you with me? You. God Lord Silvermoon was a loss for words, and she asked in both disappointment and grievance, But aren't we friends? Friends? Ji Tianxing raised an eyebrow and smiled. We'll talk about it later, if we can meet again. After saying that, his figure flashed and disappeared into the sky. Whoosh, whoosh. In the blink of an eye, he had teleported several hundred li and vanished into the sea of clouds. God Lord Silvermoon stood on a millstone next to the pool and looked up at the empty sky. She gloomily pouted and couldn't help but stamp her foot. Oomph, that detestable scoundrel. To think that he would be so heartless. I thought that he had accepted me, but I didn't think I would die from anger. The thought of this made God Lord Silvermoon both angry and ashamed. She couldn't help but stomp the millstone into powder. Ji Tianxing strolled through the sea of clouds, his white robes flapping in the wind. As he flew east, he frowned and thought, Marshal South Conquering is very cautious. When Goldenrock and I were attacking him, he took the chance to send a message, Jade Slip. That message was extremely unique and not one of the heaven-punishing race's usual methods. It was probably used to save his life in an emergency or to send important messages. That message was most likely meant for Great Emperor Heaven Punishing. If Great Emperor Heaven Punishing learns that the purple cloud planet has been lost and that Marshal South Conquering is dead, how will he react? Will he personally lead a fleet to attack the purple cloud planet? Ji Tianxing was well aware of God, Lord Silvermoon's worries and warnings. He was also well aware that the heaven-punishing race would soon return and attack the purple cloud planet. But he also understood that remaining on the purple cloud planet as a guardian was tantamount to waiting for death. He wanted to fight back against the heaven-punishing race and use them to slowly investigate the God realm. Thus, he needed to strengthen himself before the heaven-punishing race arrived. His first priority was to investigate the Purple Cloud Cave. He had reason to believe that the cave abode that celestial venerable Purple Cloud had lived in for tens of thousands of years hid some sort of secret or astonishing treasure. The Purple Cloud Cave was an alternate dimension between the Purple Cloud planet and the void, making it impossible for ordinary people to find it. But he had already asked Goldenrock and learned that the entrance to the Purple Cloud Cave was in the depths of the Sea of Clouds. This was a vast and dangerous vortex of clouds, like a hole in the sky. It was the most dangerous, forbidden zone on the Purple Cloud planet. Chapter 2591. Ji Tianxing flew in the Sea of Clouds for 5 days and 5 nights before he found the cloud whirlpool that the Goldenrock had mentioned. Looking around, there was a sea of white clouds in all directions that stretched as far as the eye could see. Only the area with a radius of 10,000 miles in the middle was a huge gap and loophole. The endless sea of clouds gathered here and were all swallowed by the gap. The terrifying whirlpool released a powerful and invisible swallowing force that crazily swallowed everything around it. Not only the clouds, but even the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was swallowed completely. Ji Tianxing stood in the sea of clouds and looked down at the whirlpool in front of him with a playful smile. The entire Purple Cloud planet is an oval-shaped planet that is protected by a divine light shield. No matter how much spiritual chi and clouds this whirlpool swallows, it can't be connected to the void. It must still be on Purple Cloud planet. Even though the huge whirlpool of clouds was extremely dangerous to ordinary people, it was still very dangerous. Martial artists who were below the martial god realm would most likely die once they entered the cloud whirlpool. However, Ji Tianxing was not worried. He calmly flew into the whirlpool. Swoosh! The rapidly spinning white cloud whirlpool swallowed him immediately. He only felt his vision go dark, as if he had crashed into a huge bubble. Then, he clearly sensed that he was passing through layer after layer of alternate spaces. Every time he passed through a space, the terrifying power of space would brutally tear and cut his body. Fortunately, he had reached the true God realm, and his divine body was strong enough. Moreover, he had mastered the law of space and quickly dissolved the power of space. In the blink of an eye, he passed through 4 layers of alternate spaces and entered the last space. In the next moment, light returned to his vision. Looking around, he was surrounded by a clear and cloudless sky. Below his feet was an endless primeval forest. In the dark green forest, there were towering trees that were hundreds of feet tall. Visible light green wood energy rose from them. Hundreds of miles away, at the end of the primeval forest, was a towering mountain range. The mountain range was thousands of feet tall. The upper half of the mountain range was shrouded in clouds and mist. Ji Tianxing looked around and confirmed that he was in the purple cloud cave. This was because the world was filled with a terrifying amount of spiritual qi of heaven and earth, as well as an extremely dense aura of divine power. He didn't need to deliberately circulate his energy to absorb it. The omnipresent aura of divine power would automatically enter his body. This made his body and mind feel comfortable, and his divine power became even more abundant. Even the wounds that had not fully healed were slowly recovering under the nourishment of the divine power. His divine power is actually so abundant. I don't think you can find another cave abode like this in the entire purple cloud star. Ji Tianxing was secretly surprised. He was also filled with anticipation towards this unfamiliar purple heaven cave. He thought to himself that since the divine power of purple heaven cave was so abundant, the flowers, trees, birds, and beasts must be extraordinary after being nourished and nurtured by the divine power for a long time. As expected, when he flew over the primitive forest, he found many strange flowers and herbs in the deep forest. They had all grown into divine medicines. Even tribulation and saint-grade medicinal herbs have become divine-grade medicinal herbs after being nourished by divine power for thousands of years. There were also some birds and beasts with ordinary bloodlines that were limited by their talents and bloodlines. They could only reach the tribulation level, but they had also broken through to the saint level. When Ji Tianxing flew over the majestic mountain range, he saw a lake with a radius of thousands of miles on the grassland ahead. In the middle of the mirror-like lake, there were 2 demonic beasts the size of mountains fighting fiercely. Flying in the sky and initiating the attack was a golden-crowned eagle the size of a mountain. This type of demonic beast was very common. Its bloodline level was lower than that of mutated beasts, and it was worlds apart from divine beasts. However, that golden-crowned eagle had lived for more than 10,000 years and had reached the immortal level. It spread its wings and covered the sky. When it opened its sharp beak, it spat out golden divine fire that covered the sky and poured into the lake, attacking a giant double-headed snake that was more than 10,000 feet long. The double-headed snake was originally an ordinary black water snake, and its entire body was pitch black. However, it had lived in the lake for more than 10,000 years and had reached the peak of the saint level, and was about to break through to the immortal level. 30% of the black scales on its body had also shrunk, and many new black dragon scales had grown out. Even under its flat abdomen, for giant sarcomas had protruded, and sharp dragon claws were about to grow. Ji Tianxing knew at a glance that once the black water snake broke through to the immortal level, it would meet the wind and clouds and transform into a flood dragon. This is indeed an excellent cave abode. Even the bloodlines of some common demonic beasts can break through the limits of talent. If the white dragon and I cultivate here, with the help of source stones, we can definitely improve our strength quickly. Ji Tianxing muttered to himself, and a glint of light flashed across his eyes. He looked even more expectant. Moreover, the flow of time here is slightly faster than the outside world, about twice as fast. In the mortal world, there are only a handful of cave abodes that can accelerate time. When he thought of this, Ji Tianxing felt that the Purple Heaven Cave was even more precious. It would be a pity if he gave up on this cave abode so easily. Before he knew it, 15 minutes had passed. Ji Tianxing flew to the end of the vast grassland and arrived above a majestic mountain range. This mountain range was thousands of feet high, but it extended in all directions, branching into 5 branches. It was like a giant cauldron with 5 legs, looking majestic and mysterious. At the intersection of the 5 branches, there was a giant mountain that was thousands of feet high, standing proudly in the sea of clouds. Ji Tianxing looked at the terrain of this mountain range and guessed that it was a man-made divine range. In this way, this mountain range became the core of the Purple Heaven Cave, where the spiritual chi and divine power of heaven and earth gathered. And that giant mountain that was thousands of feet high was the core of the divine range. It was the top cultivation ground in the Purple Heaven Cave. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing flew over the sea of clouds and towards the peak of the giant mountain. When he was still 200 miles away, he could already see a majestic palace on the flat and wide mountain peak. The palace was huge, occupying more than 20 miles in radius. It had 9 floors and was thousands of feet high. The palace was mainly dark gold, mixed with silver and purple, looking mysterious and glorious. However, the giant palace had been through tens of thousands of years and was mottled, revealing an ancient aura. There was a wide square in front of the palace. The ground was paved with colorful divine power crystals, shining brightly. What surprised Ji Tianxing was that there were 8 heaven punishers in silver armor guarding the steps that connected the square to the palace gate. The 8 silver-armored guards were somewhat absent-minded. They didn't look dignified at all. They actually gathered together and whispered to each other about something. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing immediately sneered. Ha ha ha! These abandoned wretches still don't know that the outside world has changed, right? Chapter 2592. Although they were far away, Ji Tianxing could still hear the conversation of the 8 silver-armored guards. The 8 guards were a little restless, and their voices were full of worry and anxiety. It's been a month. Why hasn't anyone come? Yes. Previously, the Grand Marshal had instructed that a batch of talented captains should be sent here 10 days ago for closed-door training. I don't know what's going on. I sent messages to several generals, but no one replied to me. I heard that Commander Sun also sent a message to the Grand Marshal, but he hasn't received a response for 10 days. It's fine if the generals don't reply, but why hasn't the Grand Marshal sent a message? I'm thinking, did something happen outside? Don't talk nonsense. Be careful that Commander Sun hears you and will punish you according to military law. Several silver-armored guards whispered to each other. Obviously, they all had a hunch that something was wrong. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing sneered even more. Swoosh! With a flash of golden light, he fell from the sky and landed on the colorful square. Outside the gate of the palace, the 8 silver-armored guards on the steps immediately sensed that something was wrong. Everyone stopped talking and turned to look at Ji Tianxing, locking their eyes on him. After seeing his appearance clearly, everyone turned pale with fright and drew their swords and sabers in unison. Who is it? How dare you trespass into the Violet Divine Palace? How did this alien get in? Cut the crap. Capture him first and hand him over to Commander Sun. Several silver-armored guards were surprised and confused. Under the leadership of their captain, they waved their swords and charged at Ji Tianxing. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Everyone spread out and surrounded Ji Tianxing. They waved their swords and swords, creating a red light that covered the sky and shrouded him. Ji Tianxing had no intention of drawing his sword. His whole body lit up with a hazy golden light, forming a protective divine light. Bang, bang, bang. Dozens of dark red swords and swords slashed on the golden light shield one after another, producing a series of muffled sounds. But the swords all collapsed, and the golden light shield was intact. Ji Tianxing was safe and sound. His body didn't even shake. He looked at everyone coldly and said indifferently, "Call the others here. I'll deal with them all together." Seeing this, the 8 silver-armored guards widened their eyes in horror, as if they had seen a ghost. "Gosh, who is this guy? He actually took our attacks head-on, and he's still unharmed. He's an intruder," informed Commander Sun. A silver-armored guard let out a soul roar, summoned the other guards in the palace, and reported the news to Commander Sun. Soon, another 8 silver-armored guards and over 100 black-armored warriors rushed out of the palace. At the front of the troop was a tall guard in golden armor. His strength was at the LV-6 martial god realm. Swoosh, swoosh. In just the blink of an eye, more than 100 guards of the heaven-punishing sect entered the square and surrounded Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing stood where he was, waiting with an indifferent expression. He was not afraid at all. The heaven-punishing race had the advantage in numbers. The 8 silver-armored guards also gained confidence and calmed down. The leader of the golden-armored guards stepped out of the crowd. He pointed his long sword at Ji Tianxing and shouted, "Alien, who are you? How did you break into Purple Heaven Cave?" This person was Commander Sun, whom the silver-armored guards had mentioned. Currently, he was the person with the highest status and the strongest ability in Purple Heaven Cave. Ji Tianxing looked at Commander Sun indifferently and said expressionlessly, "I'm the one who wants your lives." Commander Sun frowned and grinned. "Little bastard, you're so arrogant that it's ridiculous." Ji Tianxing looked at him with pity and shook his head. "What a bunch of pitiful worms. You don't even know that you're about to die." Commander Sun and the silver-armored guards were infuriated by his arrogance. They were instantly enraged, and murderous intent surged from their bodies. "Little bastard, since you're so stubborn, I'll capture you first and slowly interrogate you." As he spoke, Commander Sun waved his long sword and slashed out a shocking sword radiance toward Ji Tianxing. The silver-armored guards and hundreds of black-armored guards roared in unison and attacked with their swords and sabers. In an instant, hundreds of sword radiances covered the sky, and a dark red brilliance shrouded the entire square. Ji Tianxing did not waste any more time and finally attacked. Sword blade storm. He shouted coldly and formed a mysterious sword seal with both hands. His body emitted a golden light that shot into the sky and released an endless golden sword radiance. Swoosh! He instantly transformed into a golden hurricane that was thousands of feet tall. Thousands of golden swords shot out and created a fierce wind in the square. The red light blades that covered the sky were shattered into pieces when they came into contact with the golden sword radiance. A violent shockwave exploded. Swoosh! 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 The golden sword radiance, which was as dense as a rain of arrows, shrouded the entire square and killed many powerful cultivators. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen black-armored guards were sliced into pieces by the sword radiance. Blood splattered everywhere. Soon after, a few silver-armored guards were also swallowed by the sword radiance. The silver-armored guards that they wore were shattered by the sword radiance. Their physical bodies were also sliced into pieces and turned into scraps. In just a few breaths, more than 30 people were killed by the sword radiance. Not even their bones were left. As the sword blade storm moved quickly and wreaked havoc in the square, the number of powerful cultivators decreased rapidly. In just a few breaths, more than 100 black-armored guards were killed. Only 7 silver-armored guards and Commander Sun were left alive. However, they were also covered in wounds and blood. Everyone was scared out of their wits by Ji Tianxing's terrifying strength. They fled in panic. However, before they could escape from the square, they were killed by Ji Tianxing. After a while, the battle ended. The square was deserted. Ji Tianxing was the only one left. The sword blade storm dissipated. The dazzling golden light also retracted into his body. He walked expressionlessly. He stepped over the bloodstains and debris on the ground and walked toward the gate of the palace. There were not many guards guarding the palace. Almost all of them had been killed by him. This time he was unimpeded. No one appeared to stop him. The gate of the majestic palace was wide open. Ji Tianxing stepped over the tall threshold and entered a spacious hall. This was the first floor of the palace. The hall, which had a radius of 3,000 feet, was empty. There were only reliefs carved on the surrounding walls and many statues placed in the corners. Ji Tianxing walked around the hall and carefully observed the reliefs on the walls. He recognized that they were written in Zhixiao planet's language. However, they were of no practical value. Therefore, he walked toward the stairs in the corner of the hall and arrived at the second floor of the palace. On the second floor of the palace, there were several crisscrossing passageways. On both sides of the passageways were secret rooms with tightly shut doors. The doors of the secret rooms were sealed by arrays. Ji Tianxing used a small trick to break the sealing array and open the door of a secret room. To his surprise, there was a young martial god of the heaven-defying in the secret room. He was cultivating in seclusion. Chapter 2593. Ji Tianxing was stunned when he saw the heaven-killing martial god who was cultivating in seclusion. He suddenly remembered that the 8 silver armor guards had discussed something when they were talking. The Southern Marshal had selected some geniuses with excellent potential and sent them to the Violet Divine Palace to cultivate in seclusion and improve their strength quickly. The divine power in the Violet Heaven Cave was extremely abundant, and the flow of time was twice as fast as the outside world. Cultivating in seclusion here was indeed twice the result with half the effort, and their strength improved rapidly. There was no doubt that the young martial god was one of the geniuses who had been selected. When these thoughts flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind, the young martial god was also alerted and ended his cultivation. He quickly opened his eyes and stared at Ji Tianxing. His eyes were suddenly filled with surprise and murderous intent. Ew. The young martial god was about to ask when Ji Tianxing attacked like lightning. Swoosh! The index and middle fingers of his right hand formed a sword and pointed at the young martial god who was 30 meters away. A dazzling golden sword radiance shot out. The young martial god had no time to dodge, and his chest was pierced by the sword radiance. The dark red scale armor with 3 golden patterns was shattered by the sword radiance on the spot. It turned into wisps of red light and dissipated. The young martial god covered his empty chest with both hands. Blood kept flowing out of his nose and mouth. He stared at Ji Tianxing with his eyes wide open, but he could not say a word. The vitality in his eyes quickly dissipated. His body slowly fell to the ground and died. Ji Tianxing stepped into the secret chamber and spread out his divine consciousness to search around. Soon, he found a large number of cultivation resources in many secret compartments of the secret chamber. There were divine level herbs and elixirs, as well as a large pile of colorful divine stones. Ji Tianxing could see that these were all collected and stored by Lord Purple Heaven. However, after the heaven-killing race invaded the Violet Heaven Cave, they took over these cultivation resources. Ji Tianxing put all the cultivation resources he had collected into his space ring. Then he went to the next secret chamber. The second secret chamber was also protected by a divine formation. Ji Tianxing easily broke through it. After opening the door of the secret chamber, he saw a young martial god from the heaven-killing race in the secret chamber. He was cultivating. This person was at a critical moment in his cultivation. His body shone with dark red light. He was about to break through to the 5th level of the martial god realm. Thus, when he sensed that the door of the secret chamber had been broken open, he could not forcibly stop cultivating. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and shot out a sword light, instantly killing him on the spot. Soon after, Ji Tianxing found a large number of divine pills and divine stones, as well as many rare divine grade materials in the secret chamber. Naturally, these cultivation resources fell into his hands. Next, he searched one secret room after another. Every secret room was protected by a divine formation and stored a large amount of divine-level resources. It took Ji Tianxing 4 hours to search through the 60 secret rooms and kill 16 genius martial gods of the heaven-attacking tribe. Apart from that, he had also collected a large number of god-level resources. They were invaluable. After searching all the secret chambers, Ji Tianxing fell into deep thought. The divine power in Purple Heaven Cave is abundant. It has nourished countless god-level cultivation resources. There are all kinds of treasures. Theoretically, Heavenly Master Zi Shao has lived and cultivated here for tens of thousands of years. He should have surpassed the true God realm and broken through to the heaven God realm. However, he was only a true god, and he died under the siege of the Southern Expedition Marshal and the fleet. What was going on? Ever since Ji Tianxing had entered Purple Heaven Cave, this question had been lingering in his mind. He believed that as the most powerful person in Purple Heaven Planet, Heavenly Master Zi Shao was not a person with poor talent. Even an ordinary martial god would have reached the heaven god realm after cultivating in Purple Heaven Cave for tens of thousands of years. A peerless genius like him did not need tens of thousands of years. Perhaps he could become a heaven god in 300 to 500 years. He pondered for a long time, but could not figure it out. He decided to put it aside for the time being. He walked along the passageway to the end and stepped on the stairs to the 3rd floor of the palace. The winding staircase was submerged in darkness, and it was as silent as death. When he reached the 3rd floor, he realized that it was a spacious and dark hall. There were rows and rows of bookshelves in the hall. They were all made of dark, gray divine stones that had not decayed after tens of thousands of years. The bookshelves were filled with ancient books. They were all made of special star gold sheets. However, even with that being the case, the dark golden books were mottled and emitted an ancient aura. Ji Tianxing picked a few ancient books and scanned the contents with his divine consciousness. He read them at an extremely fast speed. In the process, he quickly learned Purple Heaven Planet's language and learned a lot about Purple Heaven Planet's history. These ancient books were all history books. They described the development of Purple Heaven Planet in the past 30,000 years since ancient times. After reading, Ji Tianxing had a deeper understanding of Purple Heaven Planet. However, he was not satisfied. He picked up thousands of ancient books and scanned and read them quickly with his divine consciousness. Time passed quietly. Ji Tianxing was so immersed in reading that he forgot about the passage of time. By the time he finished reading the thousands of ancient books, 2 days had passed. He knew the history of Purple Heaven Planet and the 100 tribes, as well as the major events of the past 30,000 years. Therefore, he stopped reading the ancient books on the bookshelves. He walked to the corner of the hall and went up the stairs to the 4th floor of the palace. When he reached the end of the stairs, he found that the end was sealed by an ancient bronze door. On the dark yellow ancient bronze door, there was a carving of Purple Heaven Planet's guardian divine beast, a lifelike golden rock, and a few strange images of gods. At first glance, there was nothing unusual about the ancient bronze door except that it was thick and sturdy. However, Ji Tianxing could see that there was a divine array on the ancient bronze door. It was not something that could be opened by ordinary people. When he used the secret technique of God's eye to observe carefully, he found that it was indeed so. The ancient bronze door was sealed by a divine array. It was not a martial god level or a true god level array. It was a heavenly god level array. This result immediately stunned Ji Tianxing, and he furrowed his brows in confusion. Isn't Purple Heaven Lord a true god? How could he have set up a heavenly god level array? Unless this divine array was not set up by him. However, since the end of ancient times, for nearly 30,000 years, he has been the strongest cultivator on Purple Heaven Planet. The more Ji Tianxing thought about it, the more confused he became. He had a vague premonition that behind this ancient bronze door, the 4th floor of Purple Heaven Divine Palace, there must be a great secret hidden. Therefore, he focused his attention on the ancient bronze door and carefully observed the sealing divine array. Time passed quietly, but he was completely focused. His golden eyes became even more profound. The heavenly god-level array hidden behind the ancient bronze door became clearer and clearer in his eyes. Gradually, the network became clearer. Chapter 2594. 2 full days passed. Ji Tianxing kept staring at the ancient bronze door without blinking. Finally, he saw through the veins of the celestial array formation and understood the structure of the divine array. Hence, he started to revolve his divine power and executed the array cracking method to crack the divine array on the ancient bronze door. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. He formed a divine seal with both hands, firing out streaks of dazzling golden divine light, injecting them into the ancient bronze door. Immediately, the celestial array formation in the door was activated, lighting up with a dense purple divine light. Swoosh! A purple light barrier with a radius of 100 feet appeared on the ancient bronze door, completely sealing off the staircase passageway. The purple light rippled like flowing water, rippling with billions of tiny divine seals and runes, as well as hundreds of millions of divine power veins. Very clearly, this celestial array formations area was not large, but the structure was extremely complex. As Ji Tianxing cast the spell, he murmured to himself, "This is indeed a heavenly deity formation from the primordial age. It evolved from the grand formation of the vast stars ocean and has 180 million variations. The powerhouse who set up this divine array must be a celestial deity proficient in the array Tao, and it took 10 years to complete. It's a pity that this grand array is overly complex. The celestial deities and divine lords of the later generations have long simplified this divine array dozens of times. In his previous life, Ji Tianxing only reached the acme of perfection in sword Tao cultivation, known as unparalleled in the world. As for array Tao, talismans, medicinal pills, and weapon refinement, he only dabbled in them and did not reach the level of being the best in the world. But even so, a mere celestial array formation still could not stump him. With his vast knowledge and attainments in array Tao, even if he only had true God realm strength, he could easily crack this celestial array formation. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Ji Tianxing continuously executed the technique, firing out countless streaks of golden divine light, cracking the divine array like spinning silk from a cocoon. He was fully immersed in it, completely forgetting the passage of time. 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, unknowingly a month passed. Ji Tianxing continuously executed the technique for 30 days and finally cracked this celestial array formation. 30 days sounded very long, but the celestial deity who set up this grand array needed several years to complete. In comparison, cracking this formation in 30 days was already considered heaven-defying speed. Shwa! The formation was broken, and the dense purple light barrier gradually disappeared. The bronze door became dim and dull. Even the ripples of divine power disappeared. Ji Tianxing took a deep breath, stretched out his palms, and slowly pushed open the bronze door. Creak, 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 creak. With a low muffled sound, the bronze door opened to both sides. The bronze door, which weighed hundreds of thousands of kilograms, trembled nonstop as dust fell from it. Ji Tianxing passed through the sky full of dust, but he was not tainted by a single speck of dust. He stepped into the darkness. He stepped into the 4th floor of the divine palace and entered a spacious, dark, and cold hall. The ground was covered with a thin layer of dust, and the air was filled with a rotten and foul smell. The surroundings were deathly silent. Not a single sound could be heard, and there was not even a trace of light. Ji Tianxing released his divine sense, penetrating the surrounding darkness and enveloping the entire hall. Thus, the scene in the hall appeared clearly in his mind. The ground beneath his feet was paved with gray stones, covered by decaying dust. The gray walls around him were carved with ancient patterns. They were all simple lines and symbols, which looked rather abstract. The hall was square in shape, but the dome was circular. There was no formation set up by the stars in the sky. Instead, there were 9 beams laid out by dark gems. Seeing this layout, Ji Tianxing frowned, and a thought flashed through his mind. This layout doesn't look like a hall for discussion or cultivation. It looks more like a mausoleum. Thinking of this, he looked at the center of the hall. In the center of the hall, there was indeed a 100-meter-tall altar. On the pyramid-like altar, there was a 10-meter-tall statue carved out of gray divine stone. Although the statue was old and mottled, its surface was covered with dust. But it could still be seen that the statue was very detailed and lifelike. It was a tall and burly foreign elder with a large head and a slightly protruding jaw. The elder's face was square and dignified. His huge eyes were deeply sunken, and his protruding jaw had a tuft of beard. His body was as straight as a sword, and his aura was extraordinary. His eyes were deep as he looked up at the sky. His hands were behind his back, and he looked like an overlord. Seeing the statue's appearance clearly, Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while, then guessed the elder's identity. Heavenly venerable purple firmament? That's right. The statue's appearance and appearance are exactly the same as the heavenly venerable purple firmament that the golden rock mentioned. After figuring out the statue's identity, Ji Tianqing was even more puzzled. Strange, the great god formation just now was set up in the ancient times. This hall has also been through tens of thousands of years, and even this statue is a product of the ancient times. But heavenly venerable purple firmament has only been dead for 10 years. Could it be that 30,000 years ago, when he just became heavenly venerable purple firmament, he created this statue for himself? Even so, how did he set up the great god formation? No, there's something wrong here. Ji Tianqing realized that something was wrong, and he muttered to himself doubtfully. At this moment, the ancient statue that was covered in dust suddenly lit up with a dim purple light. A low, feeble voice of the soul came from the statue. Your eyes are as sharp as torches. To be able to see the clues, this old man is really impressed. This voice was low and hoarse, old and weak. Ji Tianqing stared at the statue and asked in the language of purple firmament star, "Heavenly venerable purple firmament, haven't you already fallen? You actually left a remnant soul here?" As he spoke, he looked at the gray stone statue with a deep gaze and nodded slightly. You're just a true god, but you can leave a remnant soul here to be reborn in the future. Looks like it's the effect of this stone statue. The material of these gray stones is very special. Hearing his words, the remnant soul in the statue was stunned for a while. Then he praised, "Your eyes are very sharp. With such extraordinary knowledge, you don't seem like a true god. I'm very curious. Where did you come from? To be able to join forces with the Golden Rock to kill Marshal Jinnan and save the entire Purple Firmament Star?" The remnant soul's words undoubtedly confirmed his identity. He was heavenly venerable purple firmament, who had fallen long ago. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said indifferently, "Who I am is not important. Since you already know what happened outside, you should know that I came here with no ill intentions. I'm also very curious. You fell 10 years ago, so how did you know what happened recently?" Heavenly venerable purple firmament's remnant soul sighed and explained, "Since you're the benefactor of Purple Firmament Star, then I don't have to hide it from you. I'll tell you the truth. This is the Soul Calming Palace. Early in the ancient times, the previous heavenly venerable purple firmament found this secret realm in the core of the star. So, he transformed this secret realm into a cave residence and named it Purple Firmament Cave. Later, he built this Purple Firmament Divine Palace with his own hands. End of chapter. Chapter 2595. Hearing Empyrean Purple Firmament's words, Ji Tianqing came to a realization. It turned out that before Empyrean Purple Firmament, there was a previous Empyrean Purple Firmament. That was an ancient-era powerhouse who discovered this mystic realm in the deepest core of Purple Firmament Star and transformed it into Purple Firmament Cave. This Purple Firmament Divine Palace that Ji Tianqing was and was also built by the previous Empyrean Purple Firmament. Just now, before I entered the Soul Calming Hall, I cracked a heavenly deity-level array. Since the Purple Firmament Divine Palace was built by the previous Empyrean Purple Firmament, then the array was also set up by him. In other words, the previous Empyrean Purple Firmament was a celestial deity realm powerhouse. Ji Tianqing stared at the statue and opened his mouth to ask, Empyrean purple firmament's remnant soul answered, "That's right. The previous Empyrean purple firmament was indeed a celestial deity. In the purple heaven cave, he found a special type of divine stone that was extremely beneficial to the cultivation of the divine soul of the gods. Later, he researched for many years and used that special divine stone to successfully create several stone statues and store them in the divine palace. He peeled off a wisp of remnant soul from his divine soul and sealed it in the stone statues. This way, the stone statues became his appearance and could preserve that wisp of remnant soul. It's a pity that the remnant soul had consciousness but could not be reborn. In the ancient era, the previous Empyrean purple firmament fell in a great battle and truly died. It's the same for this old man. Even if I keep a wisp of remnant soul, I can only tell you some funeral matters and can't be reborn. As for what happened in the outside world, Golden Rock and this old man have a special connection. This old man naturally knows what happened." Hearing up to here, Ji Tianqing finally understood the reason and could not help nodding his head. "I see. The previous Empyrean purple firmament was indeed a celestial deity powerhouse. Very interesting. However, I still have a question." Empyrean purple firmament's remnant soul hurriedly asked, "What question? As long as this old man knows, I'll definitely answer." Ji Tianqing asked in a calm tone. The previous Empyrean purple firmament was a celestial deity realm powerhouse. Why do you only have true God realm strength? Logically speaking, the divine power in Purple Firmament Cave is abundant to the extreme. You should have broken through to celestial deity realm long after living and cultivating here for tens of thousands of years. What's going on? Heavenly Venerate Purple Firmament's remnant soul explained calmly. Actually, this question of yours has also been troubling me. I was already a 9th level martial god when I took over the Purple Cloud Star and became the new Heaven Highness. This old man cultivated here for 300 years and successfully broke through to the true God realm. 20,000 years later, this old man will reach the 9th level true God realm. But in the 40,000 years after that, this old man has always remained at the 9th level true God realm and virtually did not make any progress at all. According to the time of the outside world, Heavenly Venerable Purple Firmament had only been the astral lord for 30,000 years. However, the flow of time in the Purple Heaven Cave was twice as fast as the outside world. Therefore, he had lived in the Purple Heaven Cave for close to 60,000 years. Ji Tianqing nodded his head slightly and pressed closely. For a full 40,000 years, you've always been stuck at the 9th level true God realm. Have you never thought of investigating the reason? Empyrean Purple Firmament's remnant soul hurriedly answered, "Of course I did. This old man even spent over 10,000 years. At first, this old man thought that my aptitude wasn't enough, but it turned out that it wasn't. Later on, this old man thought that it was a problem with the cultivation method. Therefore, this old man searched the entire Purple Heaven starfield and found a few heavenly deity-level cultivation methods that were passed down from ancient times. But this old man cultivated the heavenly deity-level cultivation method, but it was also useless. I was still unable to break through to the heavenly deity realm. Later on, this old man left the Purple Heaven starfield and roamed the void. For a full 8,000 years, this old man traveled to 5 starfields and saw countless martial gods and many true gods. But this old man discovered that not only the Purple Heaven starfield, even the other starfields didn't have a single heavenly deity. Moreover, there was a starfield star lord who also faced the same problem. Like this old man, he also reached the 9th level true God realm, but ultimately could not break through to the heavenly deity realm. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing vaguely guessed something and opened his mouth to ask, "Then what happened after that? How did that starfield star lord resolve it?" Empyrean Purple Firmament's remnant soul said with a bitter smile, "That starfield star lord waited for 3,000 years and was really unwilling to wait any longer. He simply triggered the laws of heaven and earth and ascended to the divine world." Oh, Ji Tianqing raised his brows and said thoughtfully, "Then what you mean is that your inability to break through to the heavenly deity realm has nothing to do with aptitude or cultivation method. Could it be that the limit of the mortal world is the ninth level, true God realm? In the mortal world, it's forever impossible to reach the heavenly deity realm?" "That's right," Empyrean Purple Firmament's remnant soul said in a certain tone. "Only this answer can explain it. It's not that this old man can't do it. It's that the laws of heavenly Tao don't allow it." Ji Tianxing frowned and asked doubtfully, "But in the ancient times, not only were there heavenly deities in the mortal world, but there were also divine lords and divine kings. How do you explain this?" "What? There were heavenly deities, divine lords, and divine kings in the mortal world?" Empyrean Purple Firmament's remnant soul was immediately filled with shock, his tone filled with disbelief. "Of course," Ji Tianxing said in a certain tone, "in the world I'm in, they once appeared in the ancient times." This Empyrean Purple Firmament's remnant soul was immediately speechless. Only after being silent for a long time did he say in a solemn tone, "Your Excellency, the world you're in probably isn't simple. Logically speaking, this is something absolutely impossible." Ji Tianxing also fell silent, sinking into his memories. He recalled back then those words that Old Man Divine Ruins said to him before his death. Naturally, he also believed Empyrean Purple Firmament's words. The Five Elements world was definitely not an ordinary mortal world. Ji Tianxing made up his mind that after returning to the Five Elements world, he would definitely investigate it properly, hoping to be able to solve the mystery. But now was not suitable to discuss this matter with Empyrean Purple Firmament. He hurriedly changed the topic and asked, "Since you can't break through to the heavenly deity realm by staying in the mortal world, then why are you still staying? Why not be like that Star-Lord and directly ascend to the divine world?" Empyrean Purple Firmament's remnant soul answered, "If I can only break through to the celestial deity realm by ascending to the divine world, then this old man would rather be trapped here and guard Purple Firmament Star forever. After all, this old man and the Golden Rock had an agreement to live and die together. Even if I have to ascend to the divine world, this old man also has to wait for it together. It's just a pity that before it grew to level 9 true God, that scum heaven punishing dog charged over, sigh." Talking until the end, Empyrean Purple Firmament sighed helplessly. Ji Tianxing was somewhat moved. Empyrean Purple Firmament and the Golden Rock's deep friendship made him feel admiration. He also finally understood. No wonder the Golden Rock did not fear death and perished together with martial Southern conquering without the slightest hesitation. It turned out that it was in order to avenge an old friend. Just as Ji Tianxing was deep in thought, Empyrean Purple Firmament's remnant soul said again, "All right, this old man doesn't have much time. Time to talk about serious matters. Your esteemed self saved Purple Firmament Star. This old man represents the 40 billion people and expresses my most sincere gratitude to you. I hope that your esteemed self can enter Purple Firmament Cave and take over Empyrean Purple Firmament's position and continue to guard Purple Firmament Star. As a thank you gift, this old man will gift you a divine pill and a law. Please be sure to accept it." Chapter 2596. Enter Purple Cloud Cave. Take over the position of Heavenly Master and protect Purple Cloud Planet. Ji Tianxing frowned. His expression was complicated. "Heavenly Master Zi Xiao, is it so easy for you to choose the guardian of Purple Cloud Planet?" Heavenly Master Zi Xiao's remnant soul was stunned. He was at a loss for words. After a moment of silence, he explained, "Sir, you can't say that. Choosing the guardian of Purple Cloud Planet is the most important thing on this planet. How can it be done casually? However, you killed the Southern Expedition Marshal and saved the billions of people on Purple Cloud Planet. This is not only a great contribution in kindness, but also the best proof of your strength. I believe that with your character and strength, you can definitely become a heavenly master and protect Purple Cloud Planet." Ji Tianxing quickly shook his head and chuckled. "Heavenly Master Zi Xiao, You don't even know where I'm from or what my name is. It's too rash to make this decision so easily. Moreover, I have more important things to do. I can't stay on Purple Cloud Planet." Without waiting for him to finish, Heavenly Master Zijiao's remnant soul asked, "Sir, you're worried that the Heaven Punishers will send a stronger fleet and come back, right?" Ji Tianxing did not avoid the topic and said without embarrassment, "There are times when a person's strength is limited. The Heaven Punishers have many powerful people. With my current strength and condition, it's indeed difficult to fight against a large group of Heaven Punishers. However, this is not the main reason." Heavenly Master Zi Xiao pondered for a moment and said in a low voice, "You didn't deny this, nor did you brag about yourself. You're very good and trustworthy. I also understand that the Heaven Punishers have been blessed by God and have grown into the most powerful race in the world. Even I and the entire Purple Cloud Planet can't fight against the Heaven Punishers, let alone you. This is the truth. We have to admit it. However, what I want to say is that you just have to do your best and live up to your heart. If the Heaven Punishers really come back, you can't fight them head-on. You have to use your wits. Taking a step back is not shameful. As long as you can win the final victory, expel the Heavenly Dog, and take back the Purple Cloud Star, this is what a wise man should do." Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a smile, "Senior, you've seen things clearly and thought things through. You have the demeanor of a wise man." Her. Empyrean Purple Firmament's remnant soul laughed bitterly twice and said self-mockingly, "If this old man was a true wise man, I'd have long ascended to the divine world. Why would I be trapped here? If that was the case, this old man would not have died under the blade of the Southern Expedition Marshal and ended up in such a state." Ji Tianxing shook his head gently and said in a calm tone, "The one who lives to the end is not a hero, but an ambitious and ruthless person. Similarly, a person who knows everything may not be wise, and a person who has an obsession may not be a fool. A man who lives for his own beliefs is a wise man." Heavenly Venerable Purple Firmament's remnant soul fell silent, as if he was savoring his words. After a long time, he sent a voice transmission and said, "Your understanding is very insightful, and it actually allowed me to be suddenly enlightened and see the blue sky after the clouds and mist were dispelled. Thank you. This way, this old man can't be said to have any obsessions. To be able to have a hearty chat with your distinguished self before dissipating, I have no regrets in this life." Finished talking, no idea what secret art he used either. The statue lit up with a hazy purple light again. Crack, 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 crack. Following a series of crisp sounds, a gap split open on the statue's base, revealing a secret compartment. Inside the secret compartment suspended two masses of dazzling divine light, resplendent like two precious pearls, illuminating the entire hall. Looking closely, one would discover that the precious pearl on the left was five-colored. Among them, purple leaned heavily, containing vast and surging divine power, while that fist-sized light ball on the right was entirely golden in color, emitting a mysterious and powerful power undulation, as if connected with heaven and earth. Ji Tianxing stared at the two light balls and immediately understood what was going on. The five-colored light ball on the left was condensed and formed from divine power, while that golden light ball on the right was condensed and formed from law power. "Senior, this is?" Ji Tianxing raised his brows, revealing a puzzled look. He thought to himself, "I haven't agreed to Heavenly Venerable Zi Zhao's request yet." Heavenly Venerable Zi Zhao's remnant soul hurriedly sent a voice transmission and explained, "No matter what concerns you have, whether you agree to this old man's request or not, it doesn't even matter whether you are the guardian of Zixiao planet or not. This old man only wants to give you this divine pill and this law before I dissipate. Consider it my last wish to do my last bit for Zixiao planet. No matter what happens in the future, this old man only hopes that you can turn danger into safety and live through it safely. If you have some spare energy and take care of Zixiao planet, this old man will be forever grateful to you in the underworld." Heavenly Venerable Zi Zhao's words were enough to move anyone. His posture was very humble, almost without any request, only wanting to give away the precious divine pill and law. Ji Tianxing understood his painstaking efforts. For Xiao planet and its tens of billions of people, he could be said to have exhausted his mind and soul. Under such circumstances, how could he refuse Heavenly Venerable Xiao's gift? Senior sincerity to Xiao planet and its tens of billions of people is very admirable to me. Ji Tianxing expressed his admiration from the bottom of his heart, cupping his hands and bowing to the statue. Then he asked again, Senior, may I ask what is going on with this divine pill and this precept? Heavenly Venerable Xiao's remnant soul was getting weaker and weaker, and his voice was even lower as he answered. To be honest, that law was left behind by the previous Heavenly Venerable Xiao, and it has always been stored in Xiao Divine Palace. The previous Heavenly Venerable's intention was to let his successor refine this law to increase his strength and better protect Xiao planet. Unfortunately, this old man is incompetent. After studying it for tens of thousands of years, I still can't refine this law. Your talent is extraordinary, and your future is limitless. It will definitely be useful in the future. Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and asked in surprise, You still can't refine it after studying it for tens of thousands of years? As he spoke, he released his divine consciousness to envelop the golden ball of light and carefully observed it. After a while, he figured out the reason. It turned out that it was a heavenly God-level law of Earth that contained the power to control metal, stone, and Earth. However, Heavenly Venerable Xiao had cultivated his entire life and had never broken through to the heavenly God level, so naturally, he could not refine it. Ji Tianxing came to a sudden realization and sighed in his heart. At this time, Heavenly Venerable Xiao's remnant soul explained, As for that divine pill, it was born 20 years ago. Back then, when the heaven-conquering army attacked Xiao planet, many powerful people from various clans fell, and Xiao planet was in a critical situation. Therefore, this old man gathered many master gods and spent half a year to set up the Heaven Prayer Divine Formation to pray to our ancestors in the God world for blessings and protection. Our ancestors indeed sent down a great amount of divine power to baptize me and the many master gods, greatly increasing our combat power in a short period of time. However, my and the many master gods' talents were limited, and we could not withstand that great amount of divine power, so we only absorb about 70%. The remaining 30% of his divine power was condensed into this divine pill. Unfortunately, this old man and the many master gods did not have a chance to use it. Chapter 2597. Heavenly Venerate Xiao's words made Ji Tianxing reveal a look of surprise. Many of Purple Cloud Planet's ancestors have ascended to the God realm. Even now, Purple Cloud Planet still maintains contact with our ancestors' gods. He recalled his experience on the Sirius star before arriving at Purple Cloud Planet. The Sirius tribe had also used a similar method to pray for protection from the ancestors of the upper realm and received a baptism of divine power and a heavenly God-level precept. It was that ceremony that allowed Ji Tianxing to obtain the space precept. However, he did not expect Purple Cloud Planet to be like the Sirius star and have the protection of their ancestors' gods. Heavenly Venerable Xiao's remnant soul sighed and said faintly, Indeed, there is still contact. Unfortunately, the mortal world and the God realm cannot communicate. Even though our ancestors knew that Purple Cloud Planet was in trouble, they were powerless to save us. They could only send down divine power to help us resist the enemy. If our ancestors could descend on Purple Cloud Planet, even if it was just a soul clone, it would be enough to annihilate the million-strong army. Towards the end, Heavenly Venerable Xiao's remnant soul became weaker and weaker, and his voice became softer and softer. When his voice was almost inaudible, Ji Tianxing realized that his remnant soul had already dissipated. The former master of Purple Cloud Planet had been annihilated and truly vanished into thin air. The purple light on the stone sculpture also disappeared, becoming dull and lifeless. Ji Tianxing stood where he was and stared at the stone sculpture for a long time, somewhat lost. Even though he had only interacted with Heavenly Venerable Zi Shao for a short hour and had only chatted for a while. However, he felt that Heavenly Venerable Zi Shao was a worthy friend and also a wise senior. Unfortunately, in order to protect Purple Cloud Planet, Heavenly Venerable Zi Shao had died under the siege of Marshal Nan and the Heaven-defying fleet. Even if he was a level 9 true god powerhouse, he could not withstand the siege of Marshal Nan and hundreds of martial gods, as well as the bombardment of thousands of battleships. In addition, Ji Tianxing's conversation with Heavenly Venerable Zi Shao had also enlightened him. It even made him recall many past events. After a quarter of an hour, Ji Tianxing collected his chaotic thoughts and reached out to hold 2 dazzling balls of light. Although the divine pill and the law of light were only the size of a fist, they were as heavy as a mountain. Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged on the ground and began to circulate his energy to refine the light purple ball of divine power. Shua! The divine pill floated in front of him and began to spin. Strands of 5-color divine power peeled off from the divine pellet and entered Ji Tianxing's body. As the godly power entered his body, Ji Tianxing felt as if his entire body was being pricked by needles. He couldn't help but shudder. It really is the divine energy of a heavenly god. No wonder Heavenly Venerable Purple Firmament and the many divine masters could only refine 70% of it and still have such majestic divine power left. Clearly, the divine energy of a heavenly god was too pure and powerful. Even if Ji Tianxing was a true god powerhouse, in the process of refining divine power, he also had to endure tremendous pain. So, it was obvious how terrifying the pain an ordinary martial god would have to endure when refining divine energy. It was probably similar to being pierced by thousands of arrows and hacked into pieces, right? Of course, Ji Tianxing's adaptability was extremely strong. In just a few hours, his special divine body had adapted to the incomparably pure heavenly god power. The pain lessened a lot and was no longer as painful as being pricked by needles. He also increased the speed of absorbing divine power. Strands of 5-color divine power circulated in his body. After 3 cycles, it was completely refined by him. The size of the divine pellet did not shrink, but his divine power was rapidly increasing and becoming more vigorous. In just half a month, his power had increased by 10%. In 8 months, his power had doubled. And at this time, the fist-sized divine pellet had only shrunk by 30%. Such an outcome made him secretly shocked. With my special divine body, I can contain 8 times more divine power than an ordinary true god. I've only refined 30% of this divine pellet, and my power has doubled. If I refine the entire divine pellet, won't I have a chance of reaching level 3 true god? Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing became more excited and focused on refining divine power. Time passed quietly. Unknowingly, 2 years had passed. The fist-sized divine pellet was finally completely refined by Ji Tianxing. The result was as he expected. His power increased by around 3 times. He was only a step away from level 3 true god, but he did not feel regretful. After a short rest, he picked up that ball of Earth Law again and started to circulate and refine. Earth Law sounded very ordinary. It seemed like it was the same as the 5 elements laws, something that all true gods could condense and control. But in reality, it was not so. The law of Earth was a genuine heavenly god-grade law. Once Ji Tianxing grasped this law, he would be hailed as the Lord of the Earth, possessing all kinds of wonders. As long as there was land, mountains, and metal, he was an omnipotent god. In terms of defense, he could transform into 100,000 miles of land. No true god could break through. In terms of attack, he could gather the majestic divine power of 100,000 miles of mountains and rivers, suppressing all strong enemies. Apart from this, he could also travel 10,000 miles in an instant on land. In fact, he could even cross an entire continent in a day. This was a divine might that ordinary true gods absolutely did not dare to imagine. Of course, the stronger Ji Tianxing's strength, the stronger the power of Earth Law would be too. If his strength was weak, even if he grasped this law, it would also be hard to unleash its miraculous effects. Inside the dark hall, it was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. The golden ball of light rotated slowly, continuously releasing wisps of golden light, tunneling into Ji Tianxing's body. His eyes were tightly shut, fully focused on circulating and refining the Earth Law, completely forgetting everything outside his body. 1 month, 3 months, half a year passed. The golden ball of light shrunk at a very slow speed. But Ji Tianxing's strength grew at an obvious speed. His skill also became deeper. 2 years later, he refined half of the golden ball of light. His strength also reached the limits of level 2 True God Realm. After 2 months of assaulting, he finally broke through to level 3 True God Realm successfully. But the Earth Law had not been refined yet. He could only continue cultivating. A full 4 years later, the golden ball of light completely dissipated. The complete Earth Law was completely refined by Ji Tianxing. At this point, he had already been in close seclusion cultivation in the Purple Firmament Divine Palace for as long as 6 years. He circulated and regulated his breathing for a month. Only after his strength realm stabilized did he end cultivation. Swoosh! When he opened his eyes and stood up from the ground, his entire body emitted a formless divine might, immediately engulfing the entire hall. His aura changed slightly, gaining some aura of a peerless powerhouse that was as deep as the abyss and as lofty as a mountain, and also some steady aura that was heavy like a mountain. Especially that pair of eyes that were as deep as the starry sky became even more mysterious. In the pupil of his left eye, one could vaguely see the wonderful scene of thousands of spaces interweaving and changing. And in the pupil of his right eye, there was a vast territory of 1,000,000 miles, thousands of towering mountain peaks that towered to the sky, fully displaying a boundless and majestic aura. Space and earth, 2 celestial god laws, made him even more unfathomable. Chapter 2598. Ji Tianxing stood in the soul calming hall. His divine sense spread out, penetrating the darkness and enveloping the entire hall. The divine pill and earth law were both refined. It was also time for him to leave. Very soon, he discovered a secret door in the corner of the hall. 1,000 feet tall, gray stone giant door. The surface was carved with ancient and abstract reliefs. It was even covered in a layer of dust. Ji Tianxing teleported in front of the stone door and observed carefully. Looks like behind this stone door is the passageway that leads to the Divine Palace's 5th level. Logically speaking, Empyrean Purple Firmament definitely knows about the existence of this secret door. But, looking at the traces of the secret door, it has already not been opened for several tens of thousands of years. Could it be that Empyrean Purple Firmament has never been to the Divine Palace's 5th level before? Ji Tianxing's observation was meticulous. From these insignificant clues, he was able to analyze many things. The corners of his mouth curled into a hint of an interested smile and started casting the divine pupil mystic art, carefully observing the gray stone giant door. The result was just as he expected. There was an array formation seal on the gray stone giant door. Furthermore, it was a celestial deity level grand array. Clearly, it's the previous Empyrean Purple Firmament's handiwork again. Empyrean Purple Firmament only had true God realm strength and could not crack this celestial deity formation. He naturally could not enter the 5th level. This thought flashed across Ji Tianxing's mind, and he became even more focused on observing the celestial deity formation. Time passed silently. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. The sealing divine formation on this secret door was even more profound and complicated than the array formation at the Soul Calming Hall's entrance. Ji Tianxing used a full half a month before figuring out the grand array structure and network. The foundation and structure of this grand array was actually evolved from the Thousand Illusions Astral Spirit Grand Array. The previous Empyrean purple firmament actually grasped this divine formation and even superimposed even more complicated changes on this foundation. Interesting. Looks like that Empyrean purple firmament is proficient in the array Tao and has rather deep attainments. Ji Tianxing muttered to himself, the corners of his mouth curling into a smile. Unfortunately, he only has celestial deity realm cultivation in the end. No matter how profound his array Tao attainments are, there are also limitations. As he said, Ji Tianxing formed seals with both hands, firing out streak after streak of five-color divine light, flying into the gray stone giant door. Swish! Swish! Countless five-color divine lights split into strands of divine power that were as thick as a strand of hair. They entered the veins of the grand sealing formation and started to crack it. This sealing divine formation had a total of 120 million variations. It was truly unparalleled. However, this was not a problem for Ji Tianxing. In the past, as a peerless deity king, he had personally set up and deciphered many king-grade divine formations, each of which had a total of 1.08 billion variations. That was almost the pinnacle of array Tao in the world, the limit of divine arrays. 3 days, 5 days, 10 days passed. Ji Tianxing continued to cast spells without stopping for even a moment. Half a year had passed. He had used up a huge amount of divine power and was mentally exhausted. His face was a little pale. Finally, the sealing divine formation on the gray stone door was successfully broken by him. Shwa! A dense purple light lit up on the gray stone door, forming a barrier that was 1,000 feet tall. A gap appeared in the middle of the barrier, forming a door that was more than 10 feet tall. Ji Tianxing stopped and let out a long breath. His figure flashed through the door of light and flew into the darkness. Behind a huge gray stone door was not a dark passage as he had expected. Instead, it was endless darkness. The darkness separated the soul calming palace from the fifth level of the divine palace. In short, the fifth level of the divine palace was a special space. Shwa! In the next moment, with a flash of golden light, Ji Tianxing passed through the darkness and entered the fifth level of the divine palace. After stepping on solid ground, he released his divine sense and scanned the surroundings. The fifth level of the divine palace was also a spacious, dark, and cold hall. At first glance, it was no different from the fourth level of the soul calming palace. The ground beneath his feet was gray, and the walls around him were gray, covered in abstract carvings. Ji Tianxing glanced at them a few times. He could roughly tell that the scenes depicted in those relief sculptures were scenes of gods eradicating evil spirits and all living beings worshiping gods. His gaze looked toward the center of the hall, landing on a 1,000 feet tall altar. The altar made of gray stone had experienced tens of thousands of years of ancient time, leaving behind mottled traces of time erosion. It was even covered in a layer of dust. At the top of the altar, there was also a tall statue. It was a grayish-brown stone statue that was 30 feet tall. It was carved of a powerhouse with a muscular body and a strange appearance. That powerhouse's body was similar to a human's, but he had 2 abnormally thick legs, a pair of enormous feet that were as large as millstones. And his upper body actually had a pair of blade-like wings and 4 tentacle-like arms. On his long and narrow head like a date pit, there were 3 half-black, half-white eyes. Although this powerhouse's body and appearance were strange, there was not the slightest bit of evil aura. Instead, it was even more mysterious and majestic. Ji Tianxing sized up this statue a few times, then muttered in a low voice, "Looks like this is also a soul calming palace." According to previous experience, this statue should be the previous heavenly master Purple Firmament, an enlightened master who died in the ancient times. It was he who found this Purple Firmament cave in the core of Purple Firmament Planet and built the Purple Firmament Palace. I wonder if he left a wisp of remnant soul in this statue. As he spoke, Ji Tianxing released his divine sense to explore the statue. However, after his divine sense enveloped the statue, he did not find anything. He only felt an endless sense of coldness and deathly stillness. That statue was a piece of cold, lifeless godstone. Even the fluctuations of divine power were very weak. This result made Ji Tianxing somewhat disappointed and regretful. Sigh, even if it was an enlightened master, even if it was a godstone with special effects, it could not preserve a wisp of remnant soul for tens of thousands of years. After all, the long and merciless years are the greatest enemy of all gods. Ji Tianxing muttered in a low voice, and his gaze suddenly fell on the hands of the gray stone statue. The statue stretched out 4 long and narrow arms. The long and narrow palm, with 4 long fingers, was actually holding a 2-meter-long silver stone pillar. Ji Tianxing focused his eyes and observed. Only then did he realize that the stone pillar was in the shape of a sharp shuttle, and it was somewhat broken and missing. Probably because it had been through too much time, the sharp shuttle had become a dark silver color. There was no luster to speak of, and it was also covered in dust. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing waved his hand and sent out a breeze, blowing away the dust on the shuttle. He saw that the seemingly crude, dark silver shuttle was covered with ancient divine patterns and symbols. It's actually a divine artifact? Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows, and his interest was immediately piqued. He waved his hand and sent out a golden light that wrapped around the dark silver shuttle. He pulled it out from the hands of the statue and pulled it in front of him. Then, he held the dark silver shuttle with both hands and observed it attentively. After observing it for about a quarter of an hour, he finally understood the function and grade of this dark silver-pointed shuttle. From the divine patterns on this divine artifact, it's actually a supreme grade heavenly divine artifact, and it's related to stars. The previous heavenly venerable purple cloud was an enlightened master. Being able to refine a supreme grade heavenly divine artifact was already the limit of his ability. This should be the work he was most satisfied with in his life. No wonder he still held it in his arms after his death. Let's call it the Heavenly Star Shuttle for now. End of chapter. This book from Chapter 2599. A heavenly divine artifact contained heavenly God-level laws and power. It had the power to destroy the world. It was almost impossible to see such a powerful divine artifact in the mortal world. Most of the heavenly divine artifacts in the world were passed down from the ancient times. Although the Heavenly Star Shuttle was of a high grade and was made of special materials, it was still a heavenly divine artifact. After all, it was a product of the ancient times and had a history of tens of thousands of years. After such a long time, it had become mottled and emitted an ancient aura. Even the Heavenly Star Shuttle was not complete. There were a few cracks on the surface. However, to Ji Tianxing's delight, the Heavenly Star Shuttle could still be used. When he channeled his divine power into the Heavenly Star Shuttle, the Heavenly Star Shuttle immediately lit up with starlight and unleashed an unparalleled amount of power. The vast divine power wrapped around Ji Tianxing and formed a mysterious connection with the stars in the sky. It was about to take him away from the violet divine palace. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing quickly withdrew his divine power and let go of the Heavenly Star Shuttle. Swoosh! The dazzling starlight immediately retracted and retreated into the Heavenly Star Shuttle. Ji Tianxing held the Heavenly Star Shuttle and murmured with satisfaction. It is indeed a supreme heavenly divine artifact. After tens of thousands of years, it can still be used. Moreover, this Heavenly Star Shuttle can form a connection with the stars in the sky and almost took me away from the violet divine palace to the stars in the sky. From a purple cloud planet to another planet, this divine artifact could actually travel across planets? Interesting. Ji Tianxing was very clear that only divine Lord Realm powerhouses were able to grasp the secret art of jumping between stars. This kind of divine power that could allow one to cross billions of miles in an instant was definitely the dream of countless divine lords. Even though Ji Tianxing's divine soul memory had mastered this kind of divine power, his strength had not reached the divine lord realm, so he could not use it. With the heavenly star shuttle, even if I only have the strength of a true immortal, I can travel through the void and star areas. Ji Tianxing smiled with satisfaction and put away the heavenly star shuttle. He walked around the tall statue and carefully observed it twice. However, both the altar and the statue were cold and still. There was nothing unusual about them. Ji Tianxing searched the hall for a while, but didn't find anything of value. It looks like there's nothing else in this soul-calming hall besides this heavenly star shuttle. The 4th and 5th levels were both soul-calming halls, storing the statues of the 2 purple firmament heavenly venerables. What was the 6th level of the divine palace? Could it be a soul-calming hall that houses the statue of heavenly venerate purple firmament? Ji Tianxing rejected the idea as soon as it appeared in his mind. After all, this violet divine palace was built by the previous Lord Zi Shao, and it had nothing to do with the previous Lord Zi Shao. Ji Tianxing collected his thoughts and released his divine sense to search the entire soul-calming temple, looking for the entrance to the 6th floor of the divine palace. However, even after searching the entire soul-calming palace, he still couldn't find the entrance to the 6th floor. There was no such thing as a staircase or a secret door. Ji Tianxing was immediately depressed. He muttered doubtfully, "This shouldn't be. There are 9 floors in this palace. Why did it end at the 5th floor? Could it be that the top 4 floors are fake? Or there are some secrets hidden that the previous Lord Zi Shao didn't want people to know?" Even though Ji Tianxing was very curious and wanted to explore the upper 4 floors like a cat scratching at his heart, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but wonder. However, he couldn't find the entrance or passage. He could only give up and leave the 5th floor of the Soul Common Hall. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianxing walked out of the Violet Divine Palace. He released his divine sense to cover a radius of 10,000 miles, investigating everything around him. He quickly discovered that there were still dozens of survivors of the heaven-destroying clan in the palaces behind the Divine Palace. Among them, there were a few martial god realm cultivators who were cultivating in seclusion. The other dozens of people were guards and attendants who were relatively weak. Following the principle of cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots, Ji Tianxing found the dozens of survivors of the heaven-destroying clan and killed them all. The Violet Divine Palace was completely peaceful. There was no one else except Ji Tianxing. However, this was not the end. He left the Violet Divine Palace again, crossing mountains, plains, and forests, and circling the secret zone twice. It took him half a day to figure out the situation in the Violet Divine Palace. This secret zone was about 1,000,000 miles in radius, and there were hundreds of thousands of spiritual demonic beasts living in it. There were as many as 30 demonic beasts in the martial god realm. There were even thousands of demonic beasts in the martial sage realm. Fortunately, those demonic beasts were scattered everywhere and wouldn't get close to the Violet Divine Palace. During this process, Ji Tianxing also found a few young martial gods of the heaven-destroying clan. They were all talented people. These fish that escaped the net were all genius captains selected by the Southern Expedition Marshal. They were cultivating in seclusion in the Violet Divine Palace to quickly improve their strength. However, they didn't want to cultivate in seclusion in the Divine Palace. They wanted to go outside to practice or search for treasures. Therefore, these young martial gods were scattered all over the secret zone. If it wasn't for Ji Tianxing's meticulous mind, who had checked the entire secret realm thoroughly, these fellows might really have escaped from death. However now, Ji Tianxing had encountered them. Their fate was self-evident. After dealing with those young martial gods, Ji Tianxing left the Violet Divine Palace. Swoosh! With a flash of light, he returned to the sky above the whirlpool of clouds. He wasn't in a hurry to leave. He stared at the whirlpool of clouds and muttered to himself, "It would be a pity if such a secret zone with abundant divine power and an excellent environment was taken over by others." Therefore, he formed a divine seal with both hands and began to set up a divine array to seal the entrance of the Violet Divine Palace. He first spent 10 days to set up a heavenly god-level sealing array to seal the entrance. Then, he set up a heavenly god-level 10 directional maze and superimposed it on the entrance. The 10 directional maze could create illusions to cover the whirlpool of clouds so that no one would discover it. Even if an expert saw some clues, as long as he got close to the array, he would be trapped by the array and it would be difficult to find the real entrance. However, this was only the first threshold. Even if some expert managed to break the 10 directional maze formation, there was still a more complicated and mysterious sealing formation that sealed the entrance firmly. Therefore, other than Ji Tianxing, no one could enter the Violet Divine Palace, unless a heavenly god descended. After settling this matter, Ji Tianxing left with satisfaction. He flew over the sea of clouds at lightning speed and rushed toward the Zero mainland. On the way, he took out a communication jade slip and sent a message to White Dragon to ask about the situation in the few mainlands. He had been cultivating in the Violet Divine Palace for 6 years. Only 3 years had passed in the outside world. In these 3 years, White Dragon had been moving around the few mainlands with Lan Kuan, Qian Yu, and Black Dragon, hunting down the remaining members of the Heaven-defying clan. They knew the situation in the few mainlands best. About an hour later, Ji Tianxing received White Dragon's reply. After reading the contents of the communication jade slip, Ji Tianxing was finally relieved and smiled with relief. Chapter 2600. Bai Long sent a message to Ji Tianxing to report a piece of good news. Ever since the heaven-punishing divine palace had been destroyed and the Southern Marshal had died, the heaven punishers on the 5 continents had fallen apart. Many captains piloted their battleships and led their warriors away from Purple Cloud Planet in a hurry. Many heaven punishers who could not escape in time had been killed by the powerhouses of the various continents. Of course, countless heaven punishers had fled in all directions, hiding in desolate areas or in dangerous places where no one would go. In the past 3 years, Bai Long and the 3 divine beasts had been running around. They had searched the 5 continents one by one and used their special skills to find many heaven punishers. They had killed them all. After 3 years of searching, they had traveled to the 5 continents and killed more than 300,000 heaven punishers. Now that the heaven punishers had been eliminated, peace had returned to the 5 continents. Although there were a few heaven punishers who might be hiding somewhere and had not been discovered, it was not a big deal. However, this was not a big deal. An individual Heaven Destroyer elite would not be able to cause much trouble. After the 5 continents had returned to peace, the various tribes and forces began to fight. Empires sprang up one after another like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. More than 10 martial God Realm powerhouses had conquered the various empires and built many kingdoms. The power structure of the 5 continents was reshuffling, and a new order was being born. At the end of the message, Bai Long asked Ji Tianxing if he was interested in controlling the Purple Cloud Planet. As long as he made a call, the kingdoms of the 5 continents would respond. At that time, Ji Tianxing would be the guardian of the Purple Cloud Planet and the planet lord with the highest status. After reading the message, Ji Tianxing smirked and replied to the White Dragon. What planet lord? Do I look like someone who cares about a title? Don't waste time. Gather at the Zero continent as soon as possible. I'll meet up with you and bring you away from the Purple Cloud Planet to the 5 Elements world. This time on the Purple Cloud Star, I experienced some things that gave me a lot of inspiration. I'm sure that the 5 Elements world is extraordinary and it hides an earth-shattering secret. Little White, do you want to unravel this shocking mystery with me? Ji Tianxing sealed these words in a communication jade slip and sent it out with a wave of his hand. Swish! The jade slip flew up into the sky, turned into a beam of light, and disappeared. Ji Tianxing also increased his speed and headed straight for the Zero mainland. 3 days later, Ji Tianxing arrived at the Zero mainland. In the middle of the continent, there was a huge lake with a radius of 200,000 miles. It was called the Inland Sea. Ji Tianxing and the White Dragon agreed to meet in the Inland Sea. It was noon and the sun was shining brightly. On the surface of the endless lake, the ripples were clear and crystalline. In the air above the lake, there were 3 divine beasts that were as huge as mountains. The one in the middle was a giant koan that was 20,000 feet long and completely blue in color. On the left was a 3,000 feet long black dragon, and on the right was an ice blue heavenly fox that was as large as a mountain. A handsome and devilishly handsome youth in white was standing on the head of Lon Koan, looking into the distance. At this moment, a golden stream of light streaked across the sky and landed above the lake. Swoosh! After the golden light faded, a white-robed youth appeared. It was Ji Tianxing. Seeing his arrival, the white dragon and the 3 divine beasts welcomed him with joy. Disciple greets master. The white dragon flew to Ji Tianxing and stood in front of him, bowing respectfully. Get up. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly. The white dragon looked at him excitedly and asked impatiently, Master, you said in the message that you would bring me to unravel the shocking mystery of the 5 elements world? What kind of secret is it? What did you experience in the purple firmament divine palace? I knew you would be interested. Ji Tianxing chuckled and took out the Tianxing battleship. Let's get on the battleship first. We'll talk as we go. The dark and cold battleship was 20,000 feet long and suspended in the sky. Ji Tianxing stepped in first, followed by the white dragon. Lon Koan, Qian Yu, and the black dragon shrunk their bodies and flew into the battleship one after another. After the battleship's cabin door closed, the white dragon drove the battleship and flew into the sky as fast as an aurora. At this time, Ji Tianxing told them in detail what had happened earlier. The white dragon and the 3 divine beasts listened carefully. After half an hour, Ji Tianxing finished telling them what had happened. The white dragon and the 3 divine beasts were deep in thought and vaguely understood something. After a moment of silence, the white dragon said in a serious tone, Lord Purple Firmament said that it was impossible for an enlightened master to appear in the mortal world, not only in the Purple Firmament galaxy, but also in other galaxies. He felt that this was the restriction of the heavenly law, and I also felt that it was reasonable. However, the previous Lord Purple Firmament was an enlightened master. Could it be that there was no restriction of the heavenly law in ancient times? Qian Yu's eyes widened and said in a strange tone, There was no restriction of the heavenly law in ancient times, but there is now. Could it be that the heavenly law can be changed? Isn't this too unbelievable? The black dragon muttered in a low, muffled voice. What exactly is the heavenly law? Ji Tianxing said with a solemn expression, Heavenly law is not a thing. I didn't understand this problem in my previous life either. Lon Koan followed up and said, If the heavenly law really had a change, then it was absolutely an earth-shaking major event that happened. The white dragon said rather interestedly, This is just one of the problems. Whether the heavenly law had a change or not, why did it change? We have to study it carefully. Another problem is that in the 5 elements world in ancient times, a large number of enlightened masters and divine lords appeared before, and even divine kings. However, the strongest person in the Purple Firmament galaxy was only one enlightened master. There was no divine lord or divine king at all. Even in other mortal worlds, there was no divine spirit above enlightened master. This shows that the 5 elements world is very special, different from ordinary mortal worlds. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, That's right, the white dragon. You hit the nail on the head. Think about it. Where do enlightened masters, divine lords, and divine kings live? The white dragon replied without hesitation, Master, is there still a need to ask? Of course it's in the dragon realm and the divine realm. Ji Tianxing asked again, Then do you understand why these divine spirits can only live in the dragon realm and the divine realm? The white dragon thought for a moment and replied with a face full of certainty. That's because enlightened masters, divine lords, and divine kings are too powerful. Only the dragon realm and the divine realm are high-level planes, near eternal worlds, can accommodate so many powerful divine spirits. If it was in the mortal world, a divine lord could destroy an entire planet. When a divine king powerhouse comes, one punch can destroy a world. Ji Tianxing revealed an unfathomable smile and said in a playful tone, "But in ancient times, many enlightened masters, divine lords, and divine kings also appeared in the five elements world. There was even a great war between the divine spirits and the five elements world. Why was this planet not destroyed and still exists until now?" Hearing this, the white dragon and the three divine beasts were stunned for a moment, and then came to a realization. End of this chapter. Chapter 26:01. Master, I get it now. Bai Long was suddenly enlightened. He was excited and his eyes were shining. Lan Kuan, Qian Yu, and Black Dragon also looked at Ji Tianxing. They were so excited that their blood was boiling. "Old Ji, you're really amazing. You can even think of this? This is unbelievable. It's really a shocking mystery. If this is true, then it's definitely a fantastic story that will shock the entire universe." Bai Long and the three divine beasts did not say anything, because Ji Tianxing's reminder to such an extent, the answer was already clear. Facing Bai Long and the three divine beasts' gazes, Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Before this, I've been thinking about bringing Yao Yao and Ku to the divine realm when they break through to the true God realm. However, we've encountered such an interesting thing and come into contact with this shocking secret. I've decided not to ascend for the time being. Let's solve the mystery first." Bai Long quickly nodded and said with anticipation, "Master, I agree with your decision very much. Whether it's in our previous life or this life, we've never encountered such an exciting thing. If we can't solve the mystery, we'll regret it for the rest of our lives." Qian Yu also quickly said, "Old Ji, what's so fun about the divine realm? Let's study the five elements world first." Black Dragon said in a low voice, "Anyway, I'll follow Old Ji. I'll follow his decision." Lan Kuan was silent. Its opinion was not important anyway. Ji Tianxing continued, "Since you've all agreed to this, we'll start investigating immediately after we return to the five elements world. Purple Heaven Cave is a secret realm and also an alternate dimension. However, it exists in the core of Purple Heaven Planet. This has also inspired me. Let's investigate the five elements world from the core of the planet." Before he could finish, a ray of light flew from the sky and entered Tianxing's battleship, landing in front of him. After the light dissipated, a palm-sized black jade slip appeared. This was the communication jade slip that Ji Tianxing had refined with the Source Stone. It could cross stars and void. Could it be from Yao Yao or Ku? When he saw the Origin Stone jade slip, Ji Tianxing immediately thought of this possibility. However, when he took out the Origin Stone jade slip and used his divine sense to read its contents, his expression immediately changed and he frowned. This Origin Stone jade slip had been sent by God Lord Silvermoon. Before Ji Tianxing had parted ways with her, he had left her an Origin Stone jade slip as a reward. This was the only remaining connection between him and God Lord Silvermoon. God Lord Silvermoon would not use it unless it was absolutely necessary. The content of the jade slip was very short. There was only one sentence. "Tianxing, hurry up and leave Zhixiao planet. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher is here." God Lord Silvermoon's voice was rather hoarse, his tone extremely anxious and helpless. Ji Tianxing could tell that God Lord Silvermoon was injured. He gripped the Origin Stone jade slip in his hand, his eyebrows tightly knitted together as he muttered in a low voice, "After encountering such a crisis, she didn't send me a message asking for help. Instead, she reminded me to quickly escape. This foolish woman." The white dragon and the three divine beasts saw the strange look on his face and hurriedly asked questions. "Master, what happened?" "Old Ji, who is this foolish woman you speak of?" "Ku. Old Ji, are we in trouble?" Ji Tianxing put away the Origin Stone jade slip and sternly said, "It's a message from God Lord Silvermoon. She encountered the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher and warned me to quickly escape." The white dragon and the three divine beasts instantly grimaced. "What? The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher is here? So quickly? Isn't the base of the Heaven Punisher race in another star zone?" Everyone was filled with astonishment. Their originally excited mood also became heavy. Ji Tianxing sternly ordered, "White Dragon, speed up into the void. I will send a message to God Lord Silver Moon and ask her about the situation and her location. I don't know if she's on Zxiao planet or has returned to the moon spirit race." The White Dragon knew the gravity of the situation, and he also understood Ji Tianxing's personality. He would not sit around and watch, much less flee in panic. He hurriedly took control of the Tianxing warship and accelerated into outer space. Ji Tianxing also took out the Origin Stone Jade Slip and sent a message to God Lord Silvermoon. But 30 minutes later, he still did not receive a reply from God Lord Silvermoon. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. The Tianxing warship left Zxiao planet, passed through the dark violet barrier of divine light, and entered the dark and cold void. The void was silent. All one could see was endless darkness and the countless specks of starlight in its depths. Ji Tianxing and the White Dragon observed for a few moments, but they did not notice anything strange. Thus, the White Dragon piloted the Tianxing warship around Zxiao planet and began to investigate the situation in the void. About 4 hours later, Ji Tianxing suddenly saw a dark red pillar of light shining in the void in front of him. Countless huge, dark red light pillars pierced through the void like arrows, fiercely bombarding the purple cloud star. The barrier of divine light that enveloped Zxiao planet trembled under the bombardment of these pillars of light, thousands of violet shards of light splashing out. They were too far away and in the void, so Ji Tianxing and the others could not hear the explosions. But he could guess that these dark red pillars of light were so powerful that they would quickly shatter the barrier of Zxiao planet. "White Dragon, go faster," Ji Tianxing sternly ordered. Understood. The White Dragon grimly used all his strength to unleash a divine art, pushing the Tianxing warship to its maximum speed. An hour later, the Tianxing warship had traveled 80,000 li and was gradually approaching those dark red pillars of light. Only now was Ji Tianxing able to clearly see that the source of these pillars of light was a savage black warship more than 10,000 meters long. This black warship was larger than all the other heaven-punishing warships. It looked like an ancient giant beast with a pair of long and sharp wings. It opened its bloody mouth, revealing 8 sharp fangs. The warship was covered in divine formation patterns, as well as many pictures and symbols of the heaven-punishing race. It exuded a powerful aura. Ji Tianxing stared at the warship and said, "This warship is larger than Marshal Jinnan's warship, and its grade is higher as well. It's at the heavenly god level. It looks like this is most likely the heaven-punishing emperor's warship." "A heavenly god level warship?" The White Dragon frowned and said sternly, "There is no heavenly god-level powerhouse in any of the major star zones and 3,000 worlds. Doesn't that mean that no one in the 3,000 worlds can stop that heavenly god-level warship?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Of course. Otherwise, why would the heaven-punishing race have the ambition to conquer all 3,000 worlds?" The White Dragon asked again, "Master, has the heaven-punishing emperor reached the heavenly god level?" Ji Tianxing shook his head and said sternly, "Of course not. The rules of heaven have restrictions. Even if the heaven-punishing race is protected by the gods, they cannot change the rules of heaven." "That's good." The White Dragon heaved a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "As long as he's not a heavenly god, we have a chance to defeat him." Chapter 26:02. Bai Long spoke casually, but he was trying to boost their morale. He knew very well that the heavenly god-level battleship alone was enough to give them a headache, not to mention Emperor Tian Fa. At the same time, more than a dozen dark red light pillars slammed into the divine light shield of Zxiao planet. That incomparably huge purple light shield was already riddled with holes and filled with cracks. With a loud boom, the purple light shield could no longer withstand the terrifying power and collapsed on the spot. Thousands of purple light shards burst out and scattered in the void, like thousands of purple butterflies dancing in the air. A gap with a radius of dozens of miles appeared on the purple light shield. Endless spiritual chi of heaven and earth leaked out of Zxiao planet and surged into the void. The heavenly god-level battleship temporarily stopped firing and accelerated toward the gap. The heavenly god-level battleship was getting closer and closer to Zxiao planet. Ji Tianxing frowned and ordered in a deep voice, "Bai Long, speed up and intercept it. We can't let it enter Zxiao planet." Once the heavenly god-level battleship entered Zxiao planet and Tianxing battleship intercepted it, there would be a huge battle. A battle between experts of their level would cause great damage to Zxiao planet and leave behind a scene of devastation and ruin. If the two sides fought, it would even affect the other continents. That would be the consequence of destroying the world. Bai Long acknowledged the order and immediately used a secret technique to increase the speed of Tianxing battleship to the limit. Swoosh! Finally, before the heavenly god-level battleship entered the gap, Tianxing battleship arrived at the gap and stopped it. The heavenly god-level battleship immediately stopped moving forward and hovered in the void, aiming at Tianxing battleship. Ka, with a dull metallic sound, the hatch of Tianxing battleship opened. Ji Tianxing stepped out and stood proudly in the void, looking coldly at the heavenly god-level battleship. The hatch of the heavenly god-level battleship opened as well. A tall and burly figure walked out of the battleship. Ji Tianxing looked over and saw that it was a middle-aged man who was 10 meters tall and looked strong and powerful. His upper body was similar to that of a human. He had a broad chest, 2 strong and powerful arms, and a well-defined and dignified face. However, the lower half of his body was like that of a dragon horse. The horse had 4 hooves and a dragon tail that shone with golden light. His entire body was black and gold, and there were dense patterns on his body, as if they were divine patterns bestowed by the gods. A large and exquisite dark golden cloak was draped over his broad shoulders, gently swaying in the air. He also wore a 9 heavens limitless golden crown on his head, which covered his long purple hair. Ji Tianxing understood that the Heaven Punisher's powers were differentiated by color. The power of ordinary heaven-seeking experts was dark red in color, while the godly power of true god experts was dark red in color. Judging from that middle-aged powerhouse's hair color, his strength already reached the limits of the true god realm and was not far from the celestial deity realm. Ji Tianxing stared coldly at the middle-aged man. He used his god's eye secret skill to observe him and muttered, "Great Emperor Tian Fa, LV9, true god realm." At the same time, the great Emperor Tian Fa was also sizing up Ji Tianxing. When he saw Ji Tianxing's face, his eyes narrowed. He raised his eyebrows and said in a voice as loud as a bell, "I was wondering who it was. How dare you block my ship? You're so reckless. I didn't expect it to be you, you bastard." The great Emperor Tian Fa's voice had the power to pierce through gold and crack rocks. His voice was cold and indifferent, and it was filled with a domineering aura. Ji Tianxing let out a mocking grin and said, "Oh, in that case, you know who I am even without me telling you my name?" The great Emperor Tian Fa grinned and said in a cold voice, "Of course. Ji Tianxing, you ruined my clan's great plan and killed so many of my elite warriors. You even worked with that golden rock to kill the Southern Expedition Marshal, causing me to lose one of my favorite generals. This emperor will remember all the debts you've owed me. I am about to enter the Purple Cloud planet to look for you. Since you have walked right into my trap, it will save me a lot of trouble to meet you here." Ji Tianxing chuckled and said confidently, "I would also like to see how strong the great Emperor Tian Fa, who is trying to conquer the 3,000 worlds, is. If you can't even get past me, what right do you have to dominate the heavens? What's the use of your sharp tongue?" The great Emperor Tian Fa sneered disdainfully and said, "Before I kill you, I have a gift for you." Having said that, he raised his right hand and snapped his fingers. A great Emperor Tian Fa, whose body was light purple, walked out of the heavenly deity battleship. This person had the upper body of a human and the lower body of a leopard. His entire body was covered in black spots. Furthermore, This person was also a true god, and his strength had reached the 6th degree. Most importantly, in his wide and sharp right claw, he was holding a 7-foot-tall woman with a graceful figure. She was wearing a long silver dress and looked pure and beautiful. There was a crescent moon mark on her forehead and a pair of silver wings on her back. She looked a little young and looked like she was only 17 or 18 years old. However, at this moment, her clothes were in tatters and her hair was disheveled. Her breathing was weak and her body was curled up. Her body was covered in wounds from which light silver blood kept flowing out. Many of the wounds were so deep that her bones could be seen. She was severely injured. Even if she was still alive, she was on her last breath and was close to losing consciousness. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing's expression changed and a cold light flashed across his eyes. God Master Inu? She has been captured by the great Emperor Tian Fa. At this moment, 4 more martial gods in silver armor walked out of the heavenly deity battleship. Judging from their attire, these martial gods were the great Emperor Tian Fa's guards. They stood behind the great Emperor Tian Fa and lined up in a row. Each of them was carrying a martial god of an alien race who was covered in blood, wounds, and on the verge of passing out. These 4 foreign martial gods looked rather similar to God Lord Silvermoon, so they were probably experts of the moon spirit race. Ji Tianxing's eyes turned even colder when he saw this. He thought to himself, how did Godmaster Inu and her 4 martial gods end up in the hands of the great Emperor Tian Fa? If the great Emperor Tian Fa didn't kill them, why did he keep them alive and show them to me? As this thought flashed through his mind, the great Emperor Tian Fa sneered and said, Ji Tianxing, you must be familiar with the insects of the moon spirit race, right? Coincidentally, I discovered them just as I was about to reach Purple Cloud Planet. After I captured them, I used a little trick to read God Master Inu's memories. What surprised me was that not only did she recognize you, but she was also very close to you. Haha, let me tell you a secret. God Master Inu has never fallen in love in her entire life. She only fell in love with you. Are you very surprised and surprised? Chapter 26:03. The heaven-punishing emperor's words stabbed Ji Tianxing in the heart like a sharp blade. His expression did not change, but his body trembled. Heaven-punishing emperor, you despicable bastard. What are you trying to do? What am I trying to do? The heaven-punishing emperor's lips curled into a sneer. Of course I'm going to treat you to a good show and torture you bit by bit. She's fallen in love with you, so I'm going to burn her to ashes with the heaven-burning divine flame right in front of you. I'm going to let you watch her die in all kinds of pain with your own eyes. She's going to die right in front of you, but you can't do anything about it. As he spoke, the heaven-punishing emperor raised his right hand. A dark golden divine flame rose from the center of his palm and danced in the air. Even though they were 100,000 feet apart, Ji Tianxing could clearly sense the terrifying power contained within that divine flame. Flames of fury surged in his heart, but he remained calm on the surface. He said indifferently, Heaven-punishing emperor, you're too naive. For experts at our level, who would care about the life and death of others? Besides, I've only met God Lord Silvermoon once. No matter how you torture her, it has nothing to do with me. It won't affect me at all. Oh, the heaven-punishing emperor raised an eyebrow, his smile growing more playful. He tilted his head to look at the dying god, Lord Silvermoon, and sneered. God Lord Silvermoon, did you hear that? You have true feelings for Ji Tianxing, but he treats you like you're nothing. He doesn't care if you live or die. At this moment, how do you feel? Keek. God Lord Silvermoon ignored the heaven-punishing emperor. She raised her head with great difficulty and looked at Ji Tianxing with bleary eyes. Her lips moved, and blood roiled in her throat, but she could not speak. All she could do was mutter. Thus, she used her remaining divine soul energy to send a message to Ji Tianxing. You idiot! Didn't I already warn you? Why didn't you run? Why did you come here to die? There is no doubt that she did not believe what Ji Tianxing had just said. She knew in her heart that Ji Tianxing deliberately distanced himself from her in order to protect her. Therefore, Great Emperor Tian Fa's provocation was ineffective. Even when she was in prison and about to die, she never blamed anyone. She was still worried and anxious for Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing's heart trembled a little. He kept his voice calm and asked, "You've already left Zhixiao Star. Why did you come back?" God Lord Silver Moon hesitated, lowered his head, and refused to answer. Ji Tianxing knew that she was hiding something, so he asked again, "Tell me, why did you come back?" God Lord Silver Moon barely managed to raise his head, a bitter smile on his face as he messaged, "When I returned to the Moon Spirit Race, I wiped out all the Heaven Punishers and brought peace to the Moon Spirit Race. But I know that you're still on Purple Cloud Planet. The army of the Heaven Punishers will soon come to you for revenge. That's why I brought the remaining 4 martial gods to Violet Cloud Star to help you fend off the Heaven Punisher clan's revenge." So that was how it was. Ji Tianxing was enlightened. No wonder God Lord Silvermoon had come back. She was still worried about him. So after resolving the crisis of the Moon Spirit Race, she came back to help him. But the heavens were toying with her. She had brought the 4 martial gods of the Moon Spirit Race to Violet Cloud Star, but she had run into Great Emperor Tian Fa. This was a coincidence, but it was also a tragedy. No one had expected Great Emperor Tian Fa to come so quickly, and now the tragedy had already occurred. Ji Tianxing's emotions were extremely complicated as he stared at God, Lord Silvermoon. After a few moments of silence, all he could say was 3 words. "You are such a fool." God Lord Silvermoon was not angry or dejected. On the contrary, she squeezed out a smile. It was gentle, quiet, and carried with it a sense of peace and relief, as well as a sense of liberation. "But I don't regret it." Ji Tianxing softly shook his head and messaged, "Why do you have to do this?" God Lord Silvermoon wanted to say something else, but her divine soul energy grew even weaker. Great Emperor Tian Fa also noticed what was going on, and he began to laugh loudly. "Ha ha ha ha. So what if the 2 of you are communicating via voice transmission? How could you hide from this emperor? The feeling of parting with death must be wonderful." After laughing, Great Emperor Tian Fa's face turned sinister as he coldly barked, "Ji Tianxing, she has spoken her last words. You can open your eyes wide and watch her die." As he spoke, he flipped his broad right palm over and sent the heaven-burning divine flame flying toward God, Lord Silvermoon. At almost the same time, Ji Tianxing sent the god-slaying flying saber toward the heaven-burning divine flame. He also used an instant movement art, instantly crossing the distance of 100,000 feet to reach Great Emperor Tian Fa's side. He did not attack Great Emperor Tian Fa. Instead, he brazenly pulled out the Sword of Burial of Heaven and slashed at the 6th level True God. He wanted to block the heaven-burning divine flame and save God, Lord Silvermoon. However, Great Emperor Tian Fa and that heaven-burning expert were prepared. Ji Tianxing had just reached Great Emperor Tian Fa when Great Emperor Tian Fa raised his palms and swatted at him. Boom! 2 broad palms struck Ji Tianxing at the same time, causing a loud, muffled sound to ring out. His chest immediately caved in, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His body flew out involuntarily. The heaven-burning expert also grabbed God, Lord Silvermoon, and began to retreat. Boom! The god-slaying flying saber transformed into a golden streak of light that struck the heaven-burning divine flame. The heaven-burning divine flame instantly collapsed and exploded like fireworks, engulfing the area for 100 feet around. 10 some dark golden sparks landed on God, Lord Silvermoon's body, and immediately began to burn. Whoosh! The golden divine flame soared into the air, transforming into 10 some golden snakes that coiled around God, Lord Silvermoon, and began to rapidly burn away her divine body. Her clothes, hair, flesh, and blood were melting at an extremely high speed, turning into wisps of black ash. The excruciating pain caused her body to twitch and twist as she raised her head and let out a heart-wrenching scream. More than 100,000 feet away, Ji Tianxing finally managed to neutralize the impact and stop in the air. When he saw God, Lord Silvermoon in agony, as she was wrapped in the heaven-burning divine flame, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets in rage as he charged forward. But before he could reach the celestial god battleship, great Emperor Tian Fa stepped forward to meet him. Ji Tianxing stopped dreaming. If this emperor wants her dead, she can't live. As he coldly bellowed, great Emperor Tian Fa swung his fists at Ji Tianxing. Two massive dark violet fists, imbued with destructive power, instantly appeared in front of Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing was helpless. All he could do was use his sword to block, unleashing 18 dazzling rays of golden light. Bang, 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 bang. The fists clashed with the dazzling golden light, creating a series of explosions that caused the fabric of space to tremble. Dark purple and dazzling golden fragments of light immediately exploded and splashed into the void. The terrifying shock waves sent Ji Tianxing flying another 20 li. This was how domineering and powerful a ninth-level true god was.